Chapter 425. Catechus said, Brother Ding, your guess is correct. Normally, a 4-star interstellar fleet would not be mobilized for a simple delivery of supplies. Ding Ming said in surprise, Your alliance is preparing to take action? Catechus' expression was a bit serious. The alliance's upper echelons have all agreed that if the representative of the green tree race refuses to disclose the reason for the quality of the production, my fleet will use force to solve the problem. Sun Kong was surprised. Is the human world declaring war on the green tree race? Cardilla said in a low voice, I can confidently say that they are no match for us at all. Just my fleet alone can wipe out all the green tree people on the 36th green tree planet. Once the green tree race accepts the challenge, the Divine War Alliance will send out an even larger fleet. We are confident that we can end the war within a year and occupy the entire green tree race. Yang Wei was silent for a while before he suddenly said, This is not a good thing. The God War Starfield and the green tree race have been at peace for many years. Once a war breaks out, there will not be a true winner. The God War Alliance will not be able to benefit from it. I heard that the Green Spirit Divine can only grow in the purest natural environment. Once a war breaks out, this environment will disappear, and your alliance will not be able to get any wood. Catechus nodded. That's right. The upper echelons have also instructed that war is the backup plan. Unless it is absolutely necessary, we cannot use force. In fact, I personally do not agree with using force. I hope that we can resolve this peacefully. Ding Ming smiled. Sir, you don't think that we are your means to resolve this peacefully, do you? Catechus said seriously, My personal guess is that the representative of the green tree race will still refuse to disclose the reason this year. I am preparing to send a new batch of lumberjacks to the surface and enter the factory. On the surface, it will be to manage the wood, but in reality, it will be to investigate the real reason. Ding Ming smiled. You want us to be lumberjacks? Catechus frowned and said, This group of people must have the following characteristics. First of all, they can't be from our God War Alliance. The Green Tree Tribe is wary of our God War Alliance's staff. In the past 2 years, the workers we sent out were all recruited from outside, and the contracts we signed were all temporary. Ding Ming said, We're from Madison, so we seem to fit this characteristic. Catechus continued, Secondly, the strength of these workers is also more important. If a normal psionicist were to go, it would be very easy for them to encounter danger. The environment of Planet 36 is not as green as it seems on the surface. In fact, many places are filled with danger. In the past 3 years, our death toll has exceeded 3 digits. We can no longer send psionicists below the level of psychic. Ding Ming asked, Is the green tree race that powerful? You'll understand when you get to Planet 36. Catechus glanced at him and continued, Actually, there's another reason that I have to explain. We are going to investigate the reason. If the conditions were the same, no one in my fleet would be able to hijack a Golden Shield Alliance starship and control so many people at the same time. Everyone understood what he meant. Investigating the cause of the accident required a group of quick-witted people to form a team. Ding Ming's group met his requirements in every aspect. Ding Ming smiled and said, I only have one question. Catechus said, Please speak, Brother Ding. Ding Ming said, Sir, do you really think so highly of us? Catechus also smiled. If this matter goes smoothly, I will grant you the right to enter the Celestial Ring. I have the authority to do so. You won't have to go to a cruel place like the arena in the future. When he said this, Ding Ming and the others immediately showed joy on their faces. Entering the Celestial Ring was one of their greatest wishes. Xiao AI said, Ding Ming, I also suggest that you make a trip to the Green Tree race. There's a lot of information in my database that shows that this race is very similar to the dashing civilization that you're from. Ding Ming nodded and said, Sure, no problem. Catechus said, I only have one request for you. Ding Ming said, Sir, please speak. Catechus said seriously, I can only sign a 2-month contract with you. This matter must be completed within 2 months, because the upper echelons only gave me 2 months. If there is no result after 2 months, no matter how you're doing, I will summon you back because the fleet will launch an attack at that time. No one can change the outcome of the destruction of the green tree race on Planet 36. Ding Ming nodded slowly. I understand. At this time, a female soldier walked over and placed a mini photon computer on the coffee table. Katega pointed at the screen that had been generated and said, "This is the basic information of Planet 36. Ding Ming took a closer look. This planet was actually very similar to Planet Blue Moon. Looking at it from space, it was a blue planet. After the image was enlarged, the entire surface of Planet 36 appeared in front of him. 70% of the surface of Planet 36 was covered by ocean, and 30% was land. The land was completely covered by an endless forest. The image was enlarged again. The forest was made up of all kinds of strange flowers, herbs, and giant plants. This geographical environment was very similar to Pandora's V4 poison barrier planet. The data showed that the air of Planet 36 was very high in oxygen, and there were no toxic elements. However, many of the plants in the forest were poisonous. The people of the green tree race extracted these toxins and smeared them on their weapons, making them very lethal. The image changed again, and a towering tree appeared on the screen. It was located in the very center of the forest. Seeing this tree, Ding Ming knew that Xiao AI was not spouting nonsense. This was because he had seen similar trees more than once. At the border of the Dashang Kingdom, the princess used the Holy Spirit to teleport him to the Devouring Realm. On Planet V4, the ancient tree that sheltered Shui and Mingyan and the others for more than half a century was also this tree. On Planet Madison's Island, the tree that transformed Junling and the others' origin energy and nourished them after they were born was also this tree. Although the 3 trees were different in shape, Ding Ming could tell at a glance that these trees were definitely of the same type because they were very similar to each other. However, the scale of the 3 trees before him could not be compared to the one in front of him. The information on the screen showed that this tree was called the Green Spirit Divine Tree by the Green Tree race. The trunk's diameter was more than 300 meters, and its height was more than 3,000 meters. With this tree as the center, countless large trees and vegetation spread out around it for hundreds of kilometers. They towered into the clouds and covered the sky, just like a super forest. The Green Spirit Divine Tree was worshipped by the Green Tree race as a god. The people worshipped it, believing that the divine tree was the origin of their race. At the same time, it also protected all the creatures on Planet 36, reviving all living things and blessing the earth, allowing the Green Tree race to survive and reproduce for generations. The Green Spirit Divine Tree was not taken from the Green Spirit Divine Tree. The super forest had a strange ability to create. It could nurture all kinds of wood inside and outside the forest. These woods also had all kinds of wonderful effects and had great research value. Therefore, the God War Alliance signed an exchange agreement with the Green Tree race. As for the Green Tree race, the God War Alliance called them Trants. Their physical characteristics were roughly the same as humans. They were mammals with all 4 limbs and relied on their feet to run and walk. However, the Green Tree race's limbs were especially strong. Their overall height was more than 2.5 meters. Their skin was light green, and they did not have any hair. Their body size was much larger than humans. Rabbit ears, cat eyes, and fins, these unique organs allowed them to smell, hear, and see far better than humans. Not only could they fly up and down in the forest, but they could also shuttle freely in the water. The Green Tree race had a very long lifespan. Ordinary people who were not origin ability users had a lifespan of a few hundred years. They were also intelligent creatures and had a unique cultivation system. There was no lack of experts among them. Currently, in the information records of the God War Alliance, the strongest Trant that had appeared so far was an expert at the level of a spiritual knight, which was a war elder. The Green Tree race worshipped nature and lived by hunting. This point was similar to Junling's Madison planet. Therefore, their industrial technology was backward. Just like what Katega said, when faced with a powerful interstellar fleet, the green tree race had no way of resisting. How could a bone spear shake a missile or laser? Many years ago, when the God War Alliance discovered the green tree race, they did not make a move against the green tree race. On this point, the upper echelons of the God War Alliance undoubtedly had a better strategic vision than the Golden Shield Alliance. This kind of green and habitable planet was more suitable for human habitation. It also had a lot of energy resources that could be exploited. Killing would only cause destruction. That was not a win-win situation. Ding Meng thought that all of this was not as simple as what was described on the virtual screen. This was a civilization of a low-level race that humans could trample on at will. One must know that although ants were weak, have you ever seen an ant being truly destroyed? Moreover, the green tree race was not an ant. They also had their own laws and society. The motive of the God War Alliance was questionable. What is the use of this green spirit divine wood? Ding Meng asked calmly. Kataga could only spread his hands. Sorry, I don't know. My mission is to find out the reason. As for the wood, forgive my poor eyesight, but I can't see any use for it. It has a very good medicinal research value, Yang Wei suddenly said. Ding Meng knew that Yang Wei was an authority in the field of biology. He must have dabbled in these things. Professor, what do you think? Yang Wei said, I also heard that the material of this green spirit divine wood is very unique. It can treat many difficult and complicated diseases. Moreover, after its material is decomposed, it can be used to add blood-generating agents. It has an instant recovery effect on many serious injuries. It can be treated without the medical pod. That was right. This kind of thing was a miracle medicine for the soldiers on the front lines. Those who lost an arm or a leg did not need to be brought back for treatment. After being injured, they could use the medicine on the spot to quickly recover and immediately return to the battlefield. This kind of thing could not be underestimated. Perhaps it was not worth mentioning from many origin ability experts, but from the perspective of war, the frontline soldiers were always the main force. Ensuring that the main force was intact was undoubtedly an invincible position. Chapter 426, Greenwood System, Planet 36 Space Station. This space station was a square steel fortress floating in space. On the surface, there was nothing special about it, but in fact, anyone who paid attention would be able to see that this gray space station hovering above Planet 36 was like a sword hanging over their heads that could be stabbed down at any time. It was a serious threat to the safety of the Green Tree clan. It was also a subtle demonstration of the God War Alliance. The reason why we are polite to you Treants is because we are willing to be polite. Once we are not polite, we could take care of you at any time. After the fleet entered the port, naturally, someone came to greet them. Of course, Ding Meng and the others could only rest on the mothership and wait for news from Kataga. The God War Alliance and the Green Tree clan were very efficient. After Kataga got off the ship, he did not have time to rest. He went straight to the business area of the space station to meet with the Green Tree clan representatives. The result of the meeting was quickly reported back. Everything was going according to plan. This was the reason why Ding Meng and the others had to land on the ground to investigate. The search and rescue port of the mothership quickly opened, and a small transport ship floated out and slowly fell into the atmosphere of Planet 36. As soon as he entered the atmosphere, Ding Meng discovered that there were many strange flying dragons flying in the sky. These flying dragons were of different shapes, but they all had one thing in common. There was a treant standing on their necks. These treants held spears in their hands and looked majestic as they flew around in the sky. They really looked like divine soldiers. Yang Wei explained, the Green Tree clan can communicate with all kinds of creatures in nature. I didn't expect them to be companions with the legendary flying dragons. It seems that they have tamed these flying dragons. Zheng Kong sneered. It seems that the God War Alliance still has some scruples about them. Ding Meng obviously agreed with Zheng Kong. These flying dragons were of different sizes. Even the smallest one was comparable to a small spaceship. Most of them were huge and bare their fangs and claws. If there were 500 or 600 of these flying dragons, and if they were organized in an orderly manner, they would not be inferior to a small fleet in the sky. If the God War Alliance really wanted to fight, it would be unreasonable to say that they did not suffer any losses. As the transport ship continued to descend, they could already see the green spirit divine tree entrenched in the super forest through the ship's windows. This feeling was completely different from when he saw the sacred tree on the optical computer. The branches of the sacred tree were really too big. The surrounding trees were also over 1,000 meters tall, densely packed together. It was as if a huge dragon was entrenched in a mountain stream, sleeping in the forest. It didn't move, but you could feel its majestic, solemn, and sacred aura. The light bird flew out of Jun Ling's pocket again. It seemed to enjoy this kind of aura. The vitality in this place is very strong. I feel an unprecedented green vitality. This is very helpful for my growth. I like this place. After saying that, it flapped its wings and flew around the cabin, looking like it couldn't wait to land on the ground. It would have been fine if it didn't come out. As soon as it came out, Ding Ming suddenly had a strange feeling. Not far from here, there seemed to be a pair of mysterious eyes spying on him. This was not a feedback from his telekinesis vision, but an instinctive feeling. Whenever there was danger or strangeness, he could always sense it. This time was no exception. So Ding Ming quickly spread out his telekinesis vision. Unfortunately, the transport ship was still descending, and the range of telekinesis vision in the air was extremely limited. However, within a diameter of 8,000 meters, he could not see anything. Xiao AI said in a low voice, "I didn't find anything unusual either. Are you mistaken?" Ding Ming flatly denied. "It's definitely not an illusion. I have a feeling that this person can see me, but I can't find him. He seems to be nearby, but also very far away. He seems to be everywhere." This feeling was more frightening. Even Ding Ming could not find the source, so the others probably did not feel anything. He turned his head and saw that it was true. Jun Ling and the others were in front of the window, admiring the dreamlike scenery outside. None of their expressions were strange at all. They obviously did not feel that pair of eyes. There was indeed something strange about Planet 36. Ding Ming raised his vigilance. At this moment, the undercarriage of the transport ship stretched out a support tray and began to prepare for landing. This was a grassland far away from the superforest. A clear green river passed through the grassland, and the factory was built by the river. The scale of the factory was not large, and its level of modernization was also very low. It covered an area of about 50,000 square meters. The entire factory was surrounded by a circle of alloy walls, isolating the factory from the outside. There was a 5-story building in the northeast corner, and the rest of the factory was a wide square, mainly divided into the harvesting area, the processing area, and the parking apron. Hundreds of tray ants could be seen working in the factory. They cut down tree trunks one by one, removed the leaves and branches, and then used knives to peel off the bark. Finally, they were shaved into round logs that shone with a pale yellow luster and were neatly stacked in the open space. The bright yellow color of the wood was very attractive. When Ding Ming and the others disembarked, there was naturally someone to receive them. However, the person who received them was not a human, but a tall tray ant. This guy was obviously male. He held a long javelin in his hand, and his clothes were almost the same as Jun Ling and the others. They were all made of animal fur, and there were many ornaments on his body. Ding Ming scanned them. These ornaments were actually made of copper. The Green Tree tribe was really backward. "Greetings, humans from the divine battlefield. My name is Falesu. I am a manager of the factory in charge of receiving you." The trance spoke in a low, muffled voice. Jun Ling asked curiously, "You can actually speak our language?" Falesu's expression was a bit dissatisfied. "The people here have to learn your human language. Otherwise, they won't have the qualifications to be transferred to work in the factory. Besides, your human language isn't that hard to learn. It's very simple." Actually, before they came, Ding Ming and the others had already browsed through the Green Tree tribe's language. The trance language was clearly not as complicated as the human language. Everyone here was an origin energy user, so they could basically remember it after a glance. However, they still could not speak fluently, so understanding it was definitely not a problem. This Falasu was big and burly, with a stocky back and a bare waist. He was a full 3 meters tall, and his bald head was very shiny. Junling found it a bit difficult to speak because he had to raise his head to see this guy's face. It seems like you've learned it quite well. Falasu proudly shook his head. Our Green Tree tribe is an excellent race. We learn everything very quickly. Dingming also found it difficult to speak because he was on the short side. Even if he stood straight, his height could only reach Falasu's chest. All right, what do we need to pay attention to? Falasu's voice became stern. Although the factory belongs to you humans, this is still the territory of our Green Tree tribe. Therefore, you have to abide by our rules. Junling curiously asked, what rules? Falasu raised his voice. First, you're not allowed to leave the factory. If you go out, we will not be responsible for your safety. Elephant was a little dissatisfied with this rule. When he disembarked, he had scanned the treants in the factory. He did not find any powerful ones. These hundreds of people were all ordinary people, and there were no psionists. Is it very dangerous outside? Falasa glanced at him and was unwilling to explain. In any case, I've already reminded you. If you want your personal safety to be guaranteed, it's best to stay in the factory. If you have to go out because of a problem with the wood, it's best to inform me. I will report to the higher-ups, and they will send people to protect you. Dingming frowned. Is it that troublesome? Falasu ignored Dingming and continued. Second, while working in the factory, I advise you humans not to get too close to our tribe. They are not friendly to you. In the past, there were fights in the factory, and the people who suffered in the end were you. Junling asked, are there any other rules? Falasa then pointed to Fumamasa and Shueyu Mountain. Robots are not allowed to participate in the harvesting process. They can only stay in the room. When it's time for inspection, you can come out. Shueyu Mountain was amused. Little thing, what do you think? What could Fujin say? He was speechless. These aliens couldn't even differentiate between artificial bodies and robots. Junling could not help but ask why. Falasu said, the God War Alliance used to have intelligent robots working here. However, these robots have bad intentions. They scout around with bad intentions. Therefore, we strictly prohibit robots from leaving the factory. As he spoke, he pointed at San Kong and Yang Wei. The two of you must also stay in the room. You're not allowed to go out. Yang Wei was stunned. Why is that? Falasu said with conviction. I can tell that you two are researchers at first glance, especially those glasses of yours. Could it be that you're an expert or a professor? There is no way you can come to the Azure Tree, Star, to cause trouble. You'd better be honest. Last time, there was a chemistry expert who also wore glasses. This Trent's eyes were sharp. He had guessed Yang Wei's identity. Junling said, what if we don't follow the rules? Falasu said, we will inform the space station and send you back. If you are stubborn, we will have to use force. Therefore, I will tell you the rules first so that you will not be hurt. Junling could not help but laugh. He thought that it would take 8 to 10 years for you to hurt us. If we wanted to hurt you, it would be as easy as stretching out a hand. However, since they were already here, Ding Meng and the others split up. Fumamasa and Shueyu Mountain went to the factory. There was a quantum tower and other communication equipment that could be used to contact the space station. Sun Kong and Yang Wei also went to the factory. As long as there was a control panel and an optical computer, they would not have to worry about nothing. Elephant and the other 5 went to the pile area to help move the wood. Ding Meng and Junling took the instrument to the pile of wood. The instrument looked like a watch. It was given to them by Kataga. It was a special instrument with a very simple function, which was to check the quality of the wood. Ding Meng adjusted the energy slot on the side of the watch. Then let's start. Chapter 427. The use of the detector was very simple. The energy tank indicated that the watch had sufficient energy. Pick up a round log from the pile of wood and place it half a meter away from the watch. The watch could automatically sense its presence, and then the watch screen would display the test value. Beep, beep. After 2 crisp sounds, the number on Ding Meng's watch was 072, while the number on Junling's watch was 070. Katega had told them beforehand that the Alliance's requirement for wood was at least 0/60. This was a passing score. The Alliance would not buy wood that did not exceed this score. Secondly, every 5 points was a grade. Between 0/60 and 0/64, the wood was considered superior and could be used in home furnishings, building decoration, and other fields. Between 0/65 and 0/69 were rare woods. These woods had many unique effects after being made. For example, the most classic bed, which was made with green spirit divine wood, could help people sleep and wake up the brain. This was similar to the quality of the Holy Grail Federation's high-tech fiber. Between 0/70 and 0/74 had medicinal value. This was what Yang Wei had mentioned before. After the wood was decomposed, it could be used to make a new type of blood-generating agent. However, what the League of Gods really wanted was wood with a value of 0/80 and above. According to Katega, since 5 years ago, the quality of the wood provided by the green tree race could no longer reach 0 out of 80. Moreover, the quality was declining year by year. Last year, it was already considered good to be able to get 0/70 quality wood. According to this trend, this year's would all fall below 0/70. The quality of the wood provided by the Green Tree Tribe was declining, but the supplies provided by the Alliance were not fake. They were all real specialties: food, drinks, household goods, daily necessities, mechanical facilities, and other necessities of modern civilization. From the perspective of equivalent exchange, as long as the quality of the wood did not reach 80 points, the Alliance would be exchanging precious supplies for a pile of useless wood. After testing more than 20 logs, Ding Meng and Katega found that, as Katega said, the quality of the wood was all below 70 points. There were even very few wood that reached 65 points. Freysu, who had been following them all this time, explained, "We supply the same wood every year. From the beginning of the harvest to the binding, transportation, processing, and finished products, every step is the same. If you can't find out the reason, then we can't find out either." This was a typical refusal to divulge the reason. However, Dingmeng also knew that it was useless to ask Freysu. He probably didn't know the real reason, so it was pointless to ask. "Xiao AI, what do you think?" Dingmeng knew that he could only ask her for help at this time. Xiao AI said in a deep voice, "Judging from the composition, this wood does indeed have the characteristics that Yang Kong and the others mentioned. It can be used to make medicine, wood products, decorations, and so on. This is a very unique material. It can even be used to make bone armor, bone spears, and bone spears. It's even better than the bone materials on Madison." She paused for a moment before continuing, "Other than that, these woods aren't just materials. According to my analysis, they have a very tenacious vitality. Even after being processed into the form of a round wood, the signs of life still exist." Dingmeng was surprised. "Are you saying that the wood is alive?" Xiao AI said, "In theory, that's right." Dingmeng wondered, "But why can't I sense it?" Xiao AI said, "That's because of your habit. You've seen too many ordinary flowers, plants, and trees. According to your usual way of thinking, you only distinguish them as threatening and non-threatening, so it's easy to overlook some microscopic things. From a philosophical point of view, everything has spirituality, and everything in the world is actually living. Of course, this is only my preliminary judgment, but I also have evidence. Look over there." Dingmeng turned his head and looked. The light bird was flying around Elephant and the others. When Elephant and the others had tied up a pile of wood, the light bird immediately flew onto the wood and walked around. It seemed to be lowering its head to sniff the wood. "What do you smell?" Dingmeng walked over. The light bird flapped its wings. "The vitality of these woods is very strong. Their vitality is even stronger than that of Madison Planet's prairie. This will help me recover." Dingmeng was a little gloomy. He couldn't smell the so-called green vitality of the light bird. This kind of saying was too mysterious. Naturally, the light bird was a strange life form, so its perception was very different from that of Fluxer. "Don't tell me you can't smell it," the light bird asked in reply. Ding Meng's eyelids drooped. I can't smell the vitality, but I can smell a large amount of meat. He also smelled the rich meat fragrance. When he turned his head to look, he couldn't help but laugh involuntarily. Beside him, Little Arrow and Little Leopard were tearing open a box of beautifully packaged beef. The two of them are fighting over it. This was one of the snacks that Kartika had provided for them on the mothership. Before coming, Kartika had also explained that the green tree race worshipped nature. Although they hunted for a living, they rarely hunted live animals. Most of them ate fruits and grass. However, the food developed and cooked by humans was extremely delicious. Therefore, they had also prepared some for them when they had set out. This wasn't for them to eat, but for them to interact with the Treants. This type of beef, produced by the God War Alliance, was produced by the Wander brand. It was made from natural, free-range cattle. The most essential part of the cow's neck was taken from the upper part of the cow's brain. Then, the beef was stewed with several kinds of secret condiments. After opening the box and taking a bite, the meat was tender, juicy, and delicious. Even if someone didn't have an appetite, after tasting it, they wouldn't be able to stop themselves. Little Arrow and Little Leopard usually ate raw meat on Madison Planet. Now that they were eating this, not only did the two of them fight over it, even Chin Chin and Lianli ran over to snatch the 2 lumps of meat. That fragrance! To tell the truth, even Ding Meng, who had always been extremely calm, almost couldn't endure it. While Little Arrow and Little Leopard were eating with big mouthfuls, someone not far from them was anxiously looking at them. Clearly, she had smelled the fragrance and was extremely hungry. When they turned around again, they saw a girl from the tree tribe looking straight at Little Arrow and Little Leopard. This Trant girl was on the short side, only about 1.8 meters tall. Her green skin was full of luster and elasticity, and her face was pure and beautiful. Her 2 furry rabbit ears were very cute, and her pair of cat eyes were as charming as amber. She was wearing a piece of light blue leather, and she was a typical beauty in the Green Tree tribe. The girl's expression showed that she was attracted by the beef, but she seemed to be very timid. She didn't dare to come alone. She seemed to be very afraid of strangers. Lightbird suddenly said, "Wow, her breath is so pure that it's shocking." As it spoke, it flapped its wings and flew towards the girl. Strangely, the girl was afraid of Elephant and Little Leopard, but she didn't guard against Lightbird at all. She opened her palm and allowed the light bird to fall into her palm. Her cat eyes had clearly turned into a line. It was obvious that she was very fond of the light bird. She even gently stroked the light bird's little head. The light bird seemed to be enjoying it as well. This strange scene surprised Ding Meng and the others. After stroking for a long time, Light Bird spoke in the language of the Green Tree tribe. "Does it smell good?" The girl nodded. "Yes." Light Bird said, "Do you want to eat?" The girl was a little shy. "Yes." "Wait." Light Bird flapped its wings and flew back, landing in front of Junior Leopard. Junior Leopard was still focused on eating the meat. "Give me a box of your beef," Light Bird said. Junior Leopard stared at it. "Why? You don't eat meat." Lightbird knew this group of people the best. It said directly, "Give me a box of meat, and I'll teach you the Imperial Godly Wind technique." Junior Leopard's eyes lit up. "What technique is that?" Lightbird said, "It's the ultimate technique. Once you master it, you can fly freely in the sky like me. Your speed is even faster than a spaceship." Ding Meng, who was beside them, was secretly amused. He did not know about the Imperial Godly Wind technique, but he knew that low-level techniques of the Lightspeed series could not allow you to fly directly. Lightbird's nonsense could only fool martial arts fanatics like Junior Leopard. Sure enough, Junior Leopard took out a box of meat from his bag. Lightbird held the box in its mouth and ran away. The box was soon in the girl's hands. The girl had good taste. She caressed the exquisite packaging lovingly. After a long time, she opened the box. Using a wood-cutting knife, she gently cut a small piece of beef and put it into her mouth. She closed her eyes and chewed slowly. Her expression was one of enjoyment. Lightbird said, "How is it? Is it good?" The girl finally showed a sweet smile. "Thank you." Lightbird was smart. It flapped its wings and said, "If you really want to thank someone, thank him. He has the most meat." The girl immediately put her hand on her forehead and then gently reached out to Ding Ming in the distance. This was the gesture of the Green Tree tribe to express their gratitude. Ding Ming noticed that the girl did not continue to eat the meat. Instead, she put the beef back into the box and carefully sealed it. Lightbird curiously asked, "Why don't you eat it?" The girl said, "I want to bring this back and let my father and mother have taste. They haven't eaten such delicious food before." Lightbird laughed and flapped its wings. What a filial child. The girl's face began to change between green and pink. She was probably embarrassed. After a while, she leisurely walked to Ding Ming and took out a piece of green and translucent grass leaf from her pocket. The shape of the grass leaf was very strange. It was like a butterfly, but it faintly emitted a strange light. Obviously, it was not an ordinary herb. "It's for you." "Thank you," the girl said shyly. Xiao AI said in surprise, "This piece of grass leaf contains a very strange energy. I can't even analyze its composition." Ding Ming stared at the grass leaf in his palm. His gaze became thoughtful. Xiao AI said hesitantly, "Ding Ming, do you know this plant?" Ding Ming was silent for a long time before he nodded. "Its name is greenbone spiritual leaf." Chapter 428. Xiao AI was puzzled. "Greenbone spirit leaf? I don't have any records of this plant in my database." Ding Ming sighed. "When Brother Zheng Ming passed away, I used it to send him off. Mr. Yu, in order to save me, I also used it to play the war song of the extraterritorial devil nation." Xiao AI was stunned. She didn't expect the people of the Green Tree tribe to have such a thing. Ding Ming gently rolled up the spirit leaf and put it to his mouth. He slowly blew into it. Pieces of lovesickness flow down the river. Wisps of nostalgia hang with the wind. Trickles of love flow like a flawless jade spring. The faint sound of flute lingers on the valley cliff. The rustling leaves drift to whose house. Suddenly, the first red glow shines. The setting sun is like blood. Smiles like flowers. It was still the original scenery of hometown. The song was soothing, gentle, and beautiful. It had a kind of tranquility and inspiration. Jun Ling and the others couldn't help but be entranced. This sound of nature seemed to have brought them back to their hometown. The six of them played on the prairie without any worries and ran freely. Even the people of the Green Tree tribe who were busy nearby stopped what they were doing and turned to look at Ding Ming in surprise. Everyone's expression gradually became intoxicated. After a long time, the song ended. Jun Ling came back to his senses. "It's so nice. This song." The girl revealed a surprised expression. "What song is this?" Ding Ming smiled. "This song is called Original Scenery of Hometown." The girl was a little shy. "Can you teach me? I want to learn." Ding Ming smiled. "I can, but this leaf isn't enough." The girl's eyes lit up. "There are many near my house. I can take you to pick them." "That won't do." Falesu walked over with a straight face. The girl's eyes dimmed. "Why?" Falesu ignored her and turned to Ding Ming. "Her house isn't far from here, but if you want to leave the factory, you have to agree to a condition." Ding Ming said, "What condition?" Falesu said seriously, "Give me a box of your meat." Ding Ming couldn't help laughing. "No problem." Although it was said to be one box, it was actually 2 boxes for him. Jun Ling had always been smart. How could he let go of such an opportunity? 2 boxes of beef were enough to send the manager away. So why not? After strolling around the factory for a while, the sky gradually darkened. Now was the time to rest. These trants lived in the nearby tribes, so they didn't need to stay in the factory. Ding Ming and Jun Ling followed the girl named Nicole out of the factory. If the outside could be described, it would definitely be the grassland of Madison after the Stone Plains have returned to normal. However, the weeds and shrubs here were huge and dense. It was very easy for a normal person to get lost here. Nicole had probably considered this point as well. She brought the 2 of them to a place with fewer trees. About half an hour later, they arrived at a relatively flat grassland. This was obviously a small courtyard, and a small tree stood in the middle of the courtyard. Although it was called a small tree, it was actually not small. Visually, it was no less than 20 meters tall. It was only small compared to the other trees on Planet 36. There was a tree hole at the bottom of the tree. Nicole's house was here. Along the way, Dingming also found out that the Green Tree tribe also had a strict social class division. Almost all the members of the Green Tree clan lived in the trees. The higher they lived, the wealthier their family was, or the stronger their family was. They had the ability to freely climb trees that were hundreds of meters tall and even thousands of meters tall. For a family like Nicole's who lived in a tree hole at the bottom, it was obvious that they were very ordinary poor people. They didn't have good hunting skills, so they could only rely on collecting plants on the ground for a living. Nicole could be considered lucky. Her talent for languages was very good. The factory's recruitment requirement was that she understood the human language of the God War star field. After a short period of learning, she had mastered it, which was why she was able to work in the factory. The pay for working in the factory was actually very little. There was no currency in the Green Tree Tribe society. People exchanged goods with each other according to their needs. However, there were also benefits to working in the factory. This was because the God Wars Alliance had brought all kinds of strange gadgets. If Falasu was happy, he would give some to the workers first. Of course, the majority of the goods would be sent to the royal family first. The commoners had no right to handle these things. From the overall map, the factory was located in a very remote location. Thus, the people living in this area were the lowest level of the Green Tree Tribe's commoners. Starting from the factory and heading north, the people living in this area were also ordinary people. Only origin ability users could enter the super forest. The reason was simple. Planet 36 was so lush, and there were many rare beasts in the forest. If one didn't have a strength to enter the super forest rashly, the risk factor would be very high. Only after becoming an origin ability user could one enter the super forest to hunt. This was the unspoken rule. Those living in the super forest were not ordinary Traians. Almost 95% of them were origin ability users. Among them, there were 3 levels: tribe, clan, and army. The closer to the center of the Green Spirit Divine Tree, the richer and more illustrious one's status would be. The king's residence was located on the top of the Green Spirit Divine Tree. He was the supreme existence of the Green Tree clan on planet number 36. Nakona's parents were obviously not the kind of people that Falaisa said were not friendly to humans. On the contrary, the 2 old people were very warm to Ding Meng and Selena. The inside of the tree hole was completely decorated according to the rooms in the human world. However, all kinds of ornaments were plant specimens. This place was the closest to the factory. The human civilization brought by the God Wars Alliance had a great impact on the nearby area. Nakona's father made a wooden table and placed it in the courtyard. The steel bowls placed on the table were all imprinted with the symbol of the God Wars Alliance. However, the food placed on the table was an eye-opener for Junling. It was filled with sparkling grass leaves and all kinds of strange fruits. They were shaped a bit like mulberry leaves and mulberry fruits. They were colorful and very beautiful. The taste could not be said to be delicious, but it definitely did not belong to the category of food that tasted bad. In any case, Ding Meng and Junling were the kind of people who had crawled their way through the days of eating raw meat and drinking blood. They were never particular about food. It was good enough that they had something to eat. However, after Ding Meng ate these fruits, he felt refreshed, and his mind was especially clear. Xiao AI said, "These fruits have some slight benefits to the development of the brain, especially the increase of telekinesis. Although the increase is negligible, it is indeed effective. No wonder the people of the Green Tree Tribe live so long." Nikona explained very apologetically, "This place is too far from the Divine Tree. The food produced here is not very good, so I'm sorry to the 2 of you." Junling did not mind. "Are you saying that the closer we are to the Divine Tree, the better the taste of these fruits?" Nikona's father said, "Only psionists are qualified to enjoy the food produced in the Divine Tree. After eating it, they will become stronger. Naturally, we don't have such good things, but the meat you brought is really delicious. We have never eaten this before. Ding Meng said in a deep voice. By the way, Nikona, where did the wood in the factory come from? Nikona said, in the past, it was sent from the divine tree. In the past 2 years, it was harvested nearby. Ding Meng thought to himself that if the wood was affected by the divine tree, then the wood in the superforest would be very different from the wood outside. This was probably the reason. Nikona said, aren't you guys testing the wood? Ding Meng said with a smile, yes, the people of the Alliance are not very satisfied. The quality of the wood is not high. Nikona's father sighed. A few days ago, I heard from the elders of the tribe that the king is not very satisfied with the cooperation with the Alliance of Gods. Ding Meng frowned and asked, why is that? Nikona's father said, the elders mean that the Green Tree tribe has been providing the wood, but the Alliance of Gods is not willing to provide the starship technology. They only trade daily necessities, which is different from the king's original idea. Therefore, in the past 2 years, they have not allowed the wood in the divine tree to be supplied to the factory. Ding Meng could roughly guess the king's thoughts. The industry and technology of the Green Tree tribe were indeed backward, which race did not want to become stronger. Since the Alliance of Gods needed the wood, they would use the wood to exchange for technology. However, Ding Meng still could not figure out. With the strength of the Alliance of Gods fleet, they could just directly descend from the sky to suppress them. Why did they have to use this kind of cooperation, which was a waste of motor and fuel? Xiao AI said hesitantly, this is probably related to the technology they are researching. I'm afraid it is not ordinary technology. Ding Meng said, there may be other reasons. Nikona's father said, but personally, I hope to provide you with the wood in the divine tree. Ding Meng was stunned. Why? Nikona's father replied worriedly. I also heard from Fresu. He also said that the quality of the wood is getting worse and worse. The representatives of the Alliance of Gods are getting more and more aggressive in the annual talks, and the supplies provided are getting worse and worse. If this goes on, the factory will close down sooner or later. Our tribe will have a hard time. Sigh. Junling was also a little speechless. She could understand the situation of Nikona's family. They were not psionicists, and her parents did not have strong hunting abilities. They could only rely on the factory to survive. If the factory closed down, Nikona's job would be gone, and the family's livelihood would not be guaranteed. At this time, Ding Meng's eyes suddenly stared at the wooden table in a daze. Junling also sensed that someone was coming. There was a rustling sound of footsteps in the woods. There was more than one person coming. Suddenly, 7 or 8 male ints with javelins in their hands came out from the surrounding bushes and surrounded the center of the courtyard. Looking at their posture, it was obvious that they did not come with good intentions. However, Nikona's father suddenly stood up. Why are you here again? The leader of the ints was taller than Fresu. He was at least 3.5 meters tall. When he saw Nikona, he was immediately happy. Huh, you came at the right time. Nikona is at home. However, he soon became surprised. Hey, why is there a human in your house? Is he from the factory? Chapter 429. As soon as she saw the male int, the shape of her eyes changed. Her pupils quickly turned into the shape of a cross, and her facial features were distorted. Clearly, she felt fear. Nikona, come with me. Let's go to our tribe. The male int was rather direct. He walked up and stretched out his large hand to grab Nikona. His posture made it seem like he was grabbing a chicken. What are you doing? Junling was a little angry. She felt that she had always been simple and crude, but this guy was even more crude than her. Seeing that it was a human standing in front of him, the int was a little angry. Are you a human from the factory? Just pretend that I'm not. Junling said angrily. The int's pupils kept rolling, clearly angry. You better explain clearly. If you're not from the factory, you have to be careful. Don't meddle in other people's business. Junling could not be bothered with this stupid idiot. She turned her head and asked, what's the situation? Nikona had already hidden behind her father. He wants to take me to his tribe to be his wife. Ding Meng had previously browsed the marriage information of the Green Tree tribe in the photon computer. As long as a man in the tribe took a fancy to a beautiful woman, he could take her away if three conditions were met. The first was that the girl had to be of age. The second was that he could defeat the other party or the other party's family in terms of strength. The last condition was that he had to give a batch of daily necessities to the other party's family. This was a bit like a betrothal gift. The marriage method was a little primitive, but it was essentially the same as the human world. In short, if you wanted a beautiful woman, you had to have money and strength. The rich would eventually get married, and the poor would have to witness it with their own eyes. Nikona was the only child in the family, and her parents were not psionists. Such a family would definitely not be able to withstand the attention of others. Logically speaking, this was someone else's family matter, so Junling should not interfere. However, Nikona's next words were unacceptable to Junling. He already has many wives. I don't want to be his wife. He often locks his wives in cages. The fertility rate of the Green Tree clan was extremely low. According to the statistics of the God War Alliance, the Green Tree clan on the 36th planet only had 80 million people, which was less than 1/10 of the God War Star Ring, not to mention the huge God War Star region. The population of 80 million was increasing by 50,000 every year. There was a reason for such a low fertility rate. Firstly, the Green Tree race's body structure was too different from that of humans. Their sexual intercourse would cause unbearable pain to the women. Therefore, if a woman didn't like the man very much, she would definitely not be the man's wife. Women who were willing to get married would definitely be willing to endure such inhuman pain. This was the legendary ability to endure everything for love. Secondly, the gestation period of the Green Tree race's babies was too long. It usually took more than 3 years. Those Ents who had psionicist bloodlines or royal bloodlines would have an even longer gestation period. The longest gestation period was more than 10 years. During this process, the burden and pain on the woman's body was secondary. The key was that a poor family really couldn't afford the cost of gestation. Therefore, a considerable number of women in the Green Tree race chose not to marry for the rest of their lives. Not only did the Ent in front of him have many wives, but also seemed like he was forcefully abducting her. Junling was not too happy. If you want her to be your wife, you forgot one thing. The Ent said disdainfully, I can't forget. Isn't it just a gift? Go, give it to them. Nikona also likes this thing. As soon as he finished speaking, his subordinate immediately went forward and took out a bunch of things from his bag and threw them on the wooden table. Upon closer inspection, it was the green bone spirit leaf. However, its color was purple, which was much better than ordinary spirit leaves. There were about 20 of them. However, Nikona's father was so angry that his face turned green. I can even dig up these leaves. What kind of gift is this? Are you deliberately insulting us? I gave a gift. It's your business whether you accept it or not. The Ent raised his head proudly. Do it. Capture her for me. The 7 subordinates looked like they were about to step forward, but Junling immediately stood in front of them. Wait. The Ent's eyes flashed. You want to stop me? Junling said coldly. You forgot one thing. You should ask her if she is willing to be your wife. The Ent raised his head and laughed. You knew, right? Go and ask who in this area doesn't know about our Shui Shang tribe. I, Suda, never ask if others are willing to do anything. I only ask if I want to. Junling's face darkened. You mean even if she is unwilling, you will forcefully take her away? Suda was impatient. Nonsense. It's her fortune that I like her. At the very least, she doesn't have to go to the factory to work in the future. She can only starve to death if she stays here. I'm doing this for her own good. Junling was so angry that he laughed. Even if I want to have children with her, I have to ask if she agrees. You're even more arrogant than me. You talk so nobly about snatching a woman. Why don't you die? Suda's face changed, and he waved his hand. Trash human, I don't care if you're from the factory or not. If you dare to come out alone, you're courting death. Kill her for me. As soon as his voice fell, one of his subordinates stepped forward and slapped Junling fiercely. The Ent's palm was almost as big as Junling's head. As soon as the slap came out, the surrounding wind whistled. Nikona immediately closed her eyes. She had seen humans being slapped like this before. Usually, The result was either being slapped beyond recognition or being slapped to death. Pa! Everyone heard the sound of the slap, but it wasn't Junling's face that was broken. It was the Ent's wrist. Just as the Trent's palm was about to strike, Junling's hand slashed backwards, striking the Trent's wrist like a bolt of lightning. He had learned this move from Ding Meng, so he was definitely not as skilled as Ding Meng. However, this was enough. The Trant retreated, its entire arm trembling as it held onto its wrist. It was obvious that the injury was not light. Trash human, you have some skills. Suda was a little surprised. Everyone attacked together. The remaining 6 raised their javelins and stabbed at Junling. The Green Tree Tribe's javelins were all made of local wood. The flexibility and sharpness of the javelins were not inferior to the skeletons on Planet Madison. They could even pierce through alloys. Moreover, many of the Green Tree Tribe's warriors, whether it was eating, drinking, hunting, or fighting, spent their entire lives dealing with these javelins. Therefore, Junling did not dodge the 6 javelins that came piercing toward her. Nakona's family of 3 was behind her. She was also deliberately trying to teach this group of people a lesson. She wanted to show them what a real person was. Ding, 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 ding. A ray of brilliance rose from the darkness, as swift as lightning in the night sky. The brilliance flashed a few times, and the 6 javelins fell to the ground with a crackling sound. The 6 Trants held their wrists one after another, and light green blood seeped out between their fingers. As for how did Junling do it? What kind of move did she use? The 6 people did not see clearly. When the light flashed, their wrists hurt. Even if they did not drop their weapons, they had to drop them. A bunch of trash. You dare to snatch a woman with this little ability? Junling put the short knife back at her waist unhurriedly. Then she stepped on the ground. The 6 javelins automatically bounced up from the ground. Junling swept out her leg again. The javelins flew in the opposite direction as if they had eyes. Puffed, puffed, puffed. All the javelins sank into the shoulders of the 6 Ents. The physique of the Green Tree tribesmen was far stronger than that of humans. Even though the 6 javelins pierced through their shoulder blades, the 6 Trants did not fall down. They only let out muffled groans. This time, they covered their shoulders and retreated. Junling stared and said, "Scram! You!" Suda was also retreating. He had already seen that the human in front of him was qualitatively different from those weak humans in the past. If his subordinates were not a match for her, then he was even less of a match. You meddlesome human, you will regret it. If you have the guts, don't leave. Just wait here. When he said this, Suda was already 20 meters away. Junling was too lazy to pay attention to him. This group of Ents could not even be considered psionicis. Their physique was only slightly better than the Ents in the factory. In her mind, dealing with this kind of trash was a waste of her strength. You've improved a lot recently. Ding Meng could still see some clues. Junling's basic skills were solid. What she lacked were techniques and scriptures. Just now, when she swept out 6 javelins with her leg, each one accurately nailed into the right shoulder blade of each Ent, there was no difference. The circulation of origin energy and the control of strength were already quite good. When Ding Meng had been promoted to War Elder, these skills were not as good as hers. Junling revealed a smile. She knew that Ding Meng almost never praised people. To be able to receive Ding Meng's praise, she was happy from the bottom of her heart. I'm still far from you. Although she was happy, Nicole's family was extremely afraid. Nicole's father was frightened. His voice was trembling. Little Na, the 3 of you quickly return to the factory. In a while, Suda will definitely bring people here. Quickly go to the factory. They won't dare to go to the factory to capture people. Nicole said, "Dad, Mom, come with me. Lord Falesu won't leave you alone." Junling frowned. What's there to be afraid of? They're so weak. Nicole's father explained, Suda is the son of the great elder of the Water Flourishing tribe next door. The Water Flourishing tribe is the strongest tribe in our generation. Even the great elder of our tribe has to follow their wishes. Otherwise, we can't usually go out to harvest. If we provoke them, we'll be in big trouble. The warriors of their tribe are very brave. Our tribe is no match for them. At this time, Lightbird flew out. Little girl, don't be afraid. Ding Ming and Junling are here. Even if the starship in the sky comes, it'll be fine. The two of them will help you deal with it. Ding Ming was speechless. Could you brag any more? If even you were afraid of the Alliance's fleet, don't talk about me. Chapter 430. The people of the flourishing water tribe came faster than expected. When Nicole's father went to inform the elders, Ding Ming's telekinesis vision discovered that dozens of Trant warriors had appeared in the forest. They were abnormally agile, and under the cover of the night, they quickly jumped through the trees. Their speed was even faster than running on the ground. Moreover, their movements were very methodical. Although they moved forward separately, the people on the treetops, under the trees, and on the ground maintained a certain distance from each other to play the role of looking out for each other. It seemed that dozens of people were jumping and climbing everywhere, but in fact they coordinated very well as a whole. Not long after, they completely surrounded the courtyard from all directions. Suda came out of the grass again and laughed loudly. Little girl, you really dare to stay here and not leave. Junling glanced at him. I let you go once, and you still dare to come back. I admire your spirit of seeking death. Suda's face sank. If you can succeed this time, I'll consider you amazing. Junling swept a glance at the surrounding forest. What? You think it's useful to have more people? Aren't you just a bunch of scrap metal? Although she said this, she still secretly increased the circulation of her origin energy. This batch of Trant warriors was clearly different from the previous 7. Their skin color was no longer light green, but a deep blue color. It blended into the surrounding forest and had a very obvious camouflage effect. If Junling hadn't fought against the devouring monster on Madison since childhood and trained her super night vision, these Trant warriors really wouldn't have been easy to discover. Of course, even if her eyes couldn't see, her perception could still detect them. There were a total of 42 people in this batch. Among them, 24 people on the ground were advanced origin ability users. The 12 people on the tree trunks should be beginner warriors. Only the 6 people on the treetops emitted the aura of advanced warriors. One of them had a very strong aura, close to that of a war elder. Suda waved his hand again. Kill for me. Kill this woman, and you'll be heavily rewarded. These tribal warriors have been hunting for a long time, so no one dared to underestimate them when they cooperated. In Junling's vision and perception, 3 people were rushing straight at her. Judging from her experience, this was definitely not the main attack force, but to delay her. When the 3 of them moved, 3 javelins flew towards her from the left tree in a triangular formation. At this moment, Junling's mind had already simulated what was going to happen. If he dodged the javelins on the left flank, the 3 javelins on the front would force him to retreat. As long as he retreated, the group of archers on the right tree would shoot arrows at him, forcing him into a dead end. The 6 people on the treetops would then make their move. Seeing that the 3 javelins were about to hit her, Junling suddenly turned sideways and used her shoulder to explode with vibrational force. The 3 javelins immediately changed direction and flew towards the 3 people who were rushing towards her. As soon as the archers on the right tree knocked their arrows, Junling's mirror image flashed back and forth on the branches, accompanied by a bright white saber light. Her saber technique was not artistic. It was not as dazzling as Ding Ming's Katoptra deflection, but it was absolutely practical and effective. It gave people the feeling of a glowing fan floating through the gaps in the leaves. Then a pile of longbows and arrow barrels fell to the ground, followed by a series of muffled thuds. The 6 archers fell to the ground one after another, their wrists bleeding nonstop. Junling still had sympathy for these warriors. She was a warrior herself. She knew that the reason why warriors had to fight was that they were often involuntarily. They were not born to fight, so she did not kill them. The one who really deserved a beating was Suda. Her afterimage and Shuanpa were not something that these ents could react to. As soon as these people fell to the ground, Junling immediately jumped down from the tree and waved her saber at Suda. Suda still did not know what had happened, but at the same time, Junling felt a sharp chill coming from the top of her head. She had to stop even if she did not want to. A javelin-sized dark blue icicle whistled from the treetops, aiming straight for the back of her head. Junling did not turn around. She waved her saber backward, and a similar dark blue ice wall protected her back. This was the classic dark ice power. Ding! After the icicle sank into the ice wall, it was quickly frozen. But behind her, there were another 10 javelins that pierced the ice wall. The ice wall did not break, but there were many spiderweb-like cracks. The ice-type warrior in the sky once again threw out a javelin wrapped in ice. That person's timing was very accurate. The moment the ice wall was pierced by the 10 javelins, his ice spear just happened to arrive. Dong! The ice spear did hit Junling's back, but it did not penetrate because Junling's whole body was wrapped in a layer of light yellow plating. This was also a defensive martial art of the hard system. Therefore, an all-rounder also had her advantages. That was, she was not afraid of anyone in a group fight. No matter what move you used, she would always have a way to restrain it. The one in the tree was probably dumbfounded and forgot to make a move. No one present had ever seen an expert who cultivated both ice and hard body. In this daze, Junling rolled forward on the ground. She really did not show any mercy as she raised her saber and slashed fiercely. Su Da's huge body suddenly crashed to the ground. He laid on the ground and finally let out a shocking wail. That sound was so loud that it could be heard from 4 to 5 kilometers away. Junling's saber cut off his ankle and directly cut off his left foot. Young Master Su, many trants exclaimed. Shut up. Junling's right foot firmly stepped on Su Da's chest, making him unable to struggle. Then, she placed the saber on his neck. Put down your weapons and get down. Otherwise, your heads will be moved. I mean what I say. She stood proudly alone with a saber. Her whole person was really majestic and murderous, making everyone tremble. With a series of patter-patter sounds, the trants on the ground all threw down their weapons. The archers on the tree also jumped down. Junling looked at the treetops and sneered. You're not coming down, are you? After saying that, a cold light flashed and the saber in her hand fell. This time, Suda was in so much pain that he could not make a sound. His whole body twitched violently. His other leg was also cut off. The key was that Junling's foot was not big, but stepped on Su Da's chest. His breathing became extremely difficult, and there was a feeling of suffocation. Seeing that the war reverend hiding in the leaves did not move, Junling was also annoyed. Fine, you have guts. I never deal with people with guts. As she spoke, she lowered her head and looked at Suda. She slightly reduced the strength on her foot. I deal with people without guts. Come, let me ask you. Do you still want Nicole to be your wife? If he dared to say the word want at this time, he would be an idiot. Suda gritted his teeth and said, No, I don't want to. He said he didn't want to, but there was a trace of resentment in his eyes. Junling sneered even more. You're still not convinced? It seems that you haven't suffered much from women. Today, I'll let you have a taste. Swish. The cold light reappeared in the darkness. Ah, Suda screamed again. This time his right hand was cut off at the elbow. And what made him even more terrified was that once his arm was cut off, it bounced into the air. Junling's dagger flashed a few more times, and the broken arm was cut into pieces. This time, if Suda wanted to recover, he had to use the medical cabin. There were only 2 places on Planet 36 that had medical cabins. One was the temple. The temple was in the super forest. With the strength of the Shui Shang tribe, it would be a problem to enter. The other was in the factory. Don't even think about the factory. Junling was one of the human managers of the factory. I heard that people who have no hands or feet are the happiest. They even have someone to feed them when they eat. Junling stared coldly at Suda. I'm doing this for your own good. I want you to be a happy person. At this moment, no one dared to doubt her words. It was still the same sentence. When you came out to make a living, you were most afraid of encountering such a ruthless character. The Trant warriors on the ground suddenly made a walala sound. Everyone knelt on one knee and bowed their heads. In the Green Tree tribe's etiquette, it meant that they had surrendered. This was begging for mercy. You, you, you. Suda's teeth were chattering. My, my father will never let you go easily. Ah, his ruthless words couldn't be said completely. Junling's knife stabbed into his hip joint. Those who were proficient in assassination knew that although this wasn't a vital part, once it was cut, the repercussions would be great. Even if it could be treated and repaired in the future, for a long time in the future, just walking would be painful to the point of hovering between life and death. Continue to be stubborn. I like it. Junling sneered. Unfortunately, Suda couldn't hear this because he had already fainted. The ice-type war reverend on the treetop couldn't stand still anymore. He was like a monkey rolling up and down the tree a few times before arriving in front of Junling. This was an old man from the Green Tree tribe. From the wrinkles on his body, it could be seen that he was very old. Compared to the young warriors around him, his skin had obviously lost its luster. Please stop. The old man didn't kneel. He was an elder in the tribe. If he knelt, these young warriors would despair. You're already so old, yet you're still helping the tyrant? Do you have to steal a woman? Junling was angry about this. Do you have any dignity as a warrior? The old man wasn't angry. He calmly replied, the tribe's custom has always been like this. Junling said, I understand. It's the law of the jungle. Since you feel that the strong have the right to enjoy, then now that it's my turn to be strong, I'll enjoy it. Her eyes were fierce. It looked like she was going to use her dagger again. The old man was really afraid this time. He couldn't care less and immediately knelt on one knee. Please be magnanimous. Forget it. Ding Meng, who had been watching the show from afar, walked over unhurriedly. Junling wasn't convinced by anyone but Ding Meng. When she saw Ding Meng coming over, she immediately put her dagger back on her waist. She said hatefully, I'll cut off his family jewels later. Let's see if he dares to steal a woman to be his wife in the future. Ding Meng smiled. He lowered his head and said to the old man, lead the way. The old man was stunned. Where are we going? Ding Meng said, take me to see your elder. The old man's eyes were filled with uncertainty. He really didn't understand what Ding Meng meant. Ding Meng didn't have any other intentions. He just wanted to solve the problem for Nicole's family once and for all. Chapter 4:31. The Flourishing Water Tribe was not far from the factory. It was located on the clear, green riverside on the grassland. This place was spacious and flat, and it was adjacent to the river. For a tribe on the outskirts of the superforest, this was considered a good territory. The old man and a group of injured ants led the way dejectedly. Ding Meng, Junling, and Nikona followed behind. Suda was dragged along by Junling with one hand. Since his limbs were broken and he was unconscious, he did not feel anything being dragged on the ground. Ding Meng's telekinetic vision slowly spread out. For a moment, he sighed inwardly. Sometimes it was not only the human world that had rich and poor, but the Green Tree civilization was also like this, perhaps even more so. On a large grassland by the river, a huge bonfire had already been lit. On the fire was a beast that looked like a deer. The fire was burning vigorously, and golden fat fell into the fire with popping sounds. Ding Meng and the others could smell the fragrance even from across the river. Around the bonfire, a group of trants were jumping and making noise. They were humming and singing as if they were celebrating something. These trants were all adult males. When they were tired from the commotion, they would return to the crowd to drink. The wine was stored in jars, which were piled up beside the bonfire. There were quite a lot of them. Ding Meng was surprised to find that almost all the women of the Flourishing Water Tribe were locked up in cages. Some of these cages were on the ground, while others were hanging from trees. Most of the women on the ground were not good-looking, while the ones hanging on the trees were mostly young and beautiful. As long as a man was happy from drinking, he would open the cage he liked and drag the woman out into the depths of the forest. Soon, there were two strange sounds in the forest. One was a man laughing loudly, and the other was a woman wailing in pain. Hearing these sounds, Nikona's pupils shrank to a line, and her face turned from green to white. Junling was furious. What kind of tribe is this? They're no different from animals. After saying that, she immediately equipped the prototype, picked up Nikona with one hand, activated the flight boots, and flew to the opposite side. The old man and the others ran to a raft and began to paddle. As for Ding Meng, this distance was very easy. The river was about 50 meters wide, so he could cross it in a single stride. The ants on the grassland were still drinking and eating meat when Ding Meng and the other two suddenly descended from the sky. Ding Meng raised his hand and threw Su Da's body onto the bonfire, as if he wanted to burn him directly. As soon as Su Da fell into the fire, he was immediately awakened by the heat. He struggled on the ground, and there was a series of miserable howls. The tree men of the Flourishing Water Tribe also shouted and rushed over, hurriedly saving him. "It's her, it's her, it's her." Su Da's voice sounded like he was crying. The other Ents quickly recovered their battle state and picked up their weapons. The Ents' weapons were mainly javelins and longbows, but there was also a wide blade in the tribe's camp. It was obvious that the warriors in the camp were more skilled in close combat, but this was of no use to Ding Meng and Junling. They might have a chance if they launched a sneak attack from a distance, but in close combat, they wouldn't be able to get close. After the old man and the others entered the camp, they immediately disappeared into the forest behind. They were probably going to inform the elders. Not long after, a large group of Ents surrounded a man and a woman in the middle of the camp. The man looked quite dignified, and his skin was a bronze color. His clothes were clearly better than the other Ents, and he was wrapped in a long robe. Looking at the material, it seemed to be of a higher quality. This should be the elder. The strength of the members of the Green Tree clan could be roughly judged from their skin color. Ordinary citizens would have a light green skin color, while ordinary warriors would have a slightly darker skin color. Origin ability users would have an even darker skin color. The darker the skin color, the stronger the person's cultivation. However, the color of tribe elders, sect priests, and royalty was different. The woman beside the elder had a bright peach color. According to the aesthetic standards of the Green Tree tribe, this was an elegant, beautiful, and flirtatious beauty. She should be the elder's wife. Sure enough, as soon as they saw this woman, Su Da was carried over. "Mother, avenge your child." The elder's wife probably understood what had happened from the old man. At this moment, her eyes couldn't help but distort, and her face was full of anger. "The humans in the factory have never interfered with us. I didn't think that they would dare to interfere with the matters of our Green Tree tribe. Kill them for me." As soon as the order was given, countless javelins and arrows from the campsite, the bonfire, the forest, and the depths of the darkness flew toward Ding Meng and the others. There were at least 100 or 200 weapons flying toward them. This level of attack was not something that Ding Meng could deal with. Ding Meng didn't move at all. He coldly looked at the elder and the others. However, when these javelins and arrows were about to turn the three of them into porcupines, who would have thought that when they flew in front of the three of them, they would all stop in midair as if they had been bewitched? The elder's wife's face was full of shock. She couldn't understand what kind of sorcery this was. Then, all the weapons fell to the ground with a series of crackling sounds. Ding Meng and the others were not injured at all. "Go!" The elder's wife was angry. "Who cares if it's sorcery or not? With so many of us swarming you, we can even trample you to death." Ding Meng still stood there without moving. He didn't even open his mouth to speak. The weapons that had already fallen to the ground automatically bounced back and whizzed back. These javelins and arrows were now returned to where they came from. The Trance who rushed forward were caught off guard and all fell to the ground. The Trance who were shooting arrows in the trees and in the darkness also all fell to the ground. Ding Meng didn't have as many reservations as Ding Meng when he attacked. The shoulders of the Trance in the front row were all pierced. The Trance who were shooting arrows had their palms pierced by their own arrows. As for those who were throwing javelins from the treetops, their stomachs were all pierced. Many of them fell to the ground with their intestines flowing out. Ding Meng's principle had always been like this. He had already planned to let you go, but you still didn't know what was good for you. Then, I'm sorry, you can obediently lie on the ground like a corpse. It could be said that no one dared to provoke the Flourishing Water Tribe in this area. However, in front of Ding Meng, they lost more than half of their combat power in a single exchange. At this moment, the elder took 2 steps forward and said in a deep voice, "You too, I am Su Sheng, Su Da's father. I am also the great elder of the flourishing water tribe. You're openly interfering with the affairs of our green tree tribe. This doesn't seem to be against the rules, right?" Ding Ming couldn't be bothered to answer him. "Release the women in these cages." Su Sheng's pupils suddenly dilated. "You're clearly not from the same tribe as Nicole. Why are you protecting her?" Ding Ming calmly asked. "You're clearly from the same tribe as these women. Why are you torturing them?" Su Sheng said, "You humans don't understand the customs of our green tree tribe." Ding Ming said, "You don't seem to understand the rules of our human race either." Su Sheng said, "Human rules only apply within the scope of the factory. Here, we have to abide by the customs of our green tree tribe." Ding Ming sighed. "There's one thing you haven't figured out yet." Su Sheng said, "What is it?" Ding Ming said, "Logic isn't something that can be spoken out. It's really logic." Su Sheng understood. Truth could only be proven with one's fists. At this moment, Ding Ming sensed a strong wave of psionic power emanating from Su Sheng's body. Now that she had been trained by Ding Ming, she knew the difference between different types of psionic power. This Su Sheng was obviously an expert in body hardening. Once he activated his psionic power, a green glow appeared all over his body. It was like a layer of indistinct plating. Strictly speaking, this had already exceeded the scope of plating. It should be a very strong defensive shield. This person was at least at the level of psychic. Who knew that Ding Ming would turn a blind eye to it? His gaze landed on the barbecued meat on the bonfire. The meat was bigger than a human body. It was roasted until it was golden and extremely tempting. Just looking at it made one's appetite rise. "What a pity," Ding Ming suddenly said. Junling was puzzled. "What's a pity?" Ding Ming said, "If I do it, this meat will be gone. That's why I said it's a pity." Junling did not understand this, but the light bird was smart. It flapped its wings and flew in the air. "Little girl, does it smell good?" Nikona had been feeling uneasy. When she heard the light bird's words, she also did not understand. They were about to fight with the powerful tribe elder, and they were still in the mood to chat. However, Nikona was very honest. She nodded awkwardly. "It does." The light bird seemed to be smiling. "Do you want to eat it?" Nikona's face turned pink again. "Yes." Ding Ming smiled. "Okay, I'll leave this meat for you." Seeing that they were still in the mood to talk about barbecued meat, Su Sheng could not help it. He was a dignified elder, but they completely ignored him. Even the priests of the sect had not been so rude to him. He could not tolerate this kind of humiliation. The result of not being able to tolerate it was to take the initiative to attack. This was a big taboo in the military. The body hardening system was about controlling the enemy after they attacked. How could they take the initiative to attack like the thermodynamic system and the light system? "You're not an assassin." Su Sheng suddenly flew up. He was like a green dragon in the air. The whole camp was covered in green light. This light even covered the bonfire. He opened his hands and twisted his 10 fingers. His fingers were like the thorny vines in the dense forest. They coiled around Ding Ming like poisonous snakes. To be honest, if this martial arts technique was a few years ago, Ding Ming would not have been able to deal with it. The body hardening system's cultivation of this ever-changing effect probably had something to do with the natural environment of Planet 36. The 10 vines were hard and soft, and had both attack and defense. Since it was used by a tribe elder, he must have had many years of experience. However, all of this was futile in front of Ding Ming's telekinesis vision. The 10 fingers poked in front of Ding Ming's eyes like 10 water snakes crashing into an underwater barrier. No matter how they twisted and retracted, they couldn't move forward at all. Originally, the trance and the surroundings were still cheering. This move of the elder had rarely met a worthy opponent in the past few decades. But now, all the cheers stopped abruptly because Ding Ming didn't move from the beginning to the end. Ding Ming only faced the astonished elder and opened her mouth to spit out a mouthful of air. The elder's face was like being struck by lightning. He flew upside down and spun rapidly in the air. In the end, he crashed into 3 big trees, and fell into an unknown corner. The whole camp was dead silent. All the tree men were stunned. Their expressions were as if they had seen an alien. The light bird flapped its wings happily and said, "Huh, I told you. Ding Ming has always been very fond of little girls. If he said he would give you meat, then he will definitely give you meat." Ding Ming rolled his eyes and was speechless again. He thought to himself, "I want to eat it, okay? If such a big lump of good meat is smashed by me, wouldn't that be a waste of God's gift?" Chapter 432. When Su Sheng crawled out of the thicket, his face was covered in blood. His appearance was very frightening. The other treants hurriedly went to help him, but he coldly shook them off. It seemed that he was very unconvinced. Ding Meng still said the same thing. "Release the women in these cages." Su Sheng gritted his teeth and said, "In your dreams." Ding Meng was too lazy to say anything more. With a slight force from his eyes, Su Sheng's wife suddenly left the ground and struggled to fly into the air. At the same time, an empty cage on the ground also flew into the air and locked her inside. Under the control of telekinesis, the cage flew to the river and floated in the air. Junling coldly said, "I'll ask you one last time. Will you release her?" It would be a lie to say that Su Sheng didn't panic. The cage wasn't made of alloy, so it wouldn't have a problem keeping ordinary women inside. However, his wife wasn't an ordinary person. No matter how hard she struggled inside, the cage didn't move at all. Ding Meng sighed. "Well, I hope she can hold on." As soon as his voice fell, the cage fell into the water with a plop. The green tree tribe had fins under their ears that would automatically stretch out to breathe underwater, so they definitely wouldn't drown to death. Ding Meng also didn't think that this method could drown an origin ability user, so the cage sank into the water and was immediately pulled back into the air. Then it fell back down and was pulled back up again. This repeated over and over again. Su Sheng's wife's whole body was wet. At first, she was still struggling, but after more than 10 times, with the increase of Ding Meng's telekinesis, she was locked inside on the verge of death. Junling pulled out a short knife and slowly walked to the river. "I heard that the green tree tribe has a long life. I don't know if I'll also have a long life if I eat her meat." This time, Su Sheng could no longer remain calm. He had already seen Junling drag his wife out of the cage and drag her to the central bonfire. He was preparing to eat barbecued human meat. Plop! Su Sheng finally knelt on one knee and lowered his head. Please let her go. He was not a fool. No matter how unconvinced he was well aware of the gap between himself and Ding Meng. If someone had said that they could send him flying with a puff of air, he would have definitely thought that the person who said this was an idiot. But now, he felt like an idiot who was at the mercy of others. With him kneeling, the other treants followed suit. The rules of the Green Tree Tribe were simple and crude. When an expert descended, you had to submit even if you didn't want to. The cages on the ground and on the tree were all opened, and the women locked inside were released. Junling stepped forward and said loudly, "You are free now. Go back quickly." How could these women dare to leave? They had long been bullied by the people of the Flourishing Water Tribe to the point of having a shadow in their hearts. They all stayed where they were, trembling in fear. Su Sheng sighed. "I, Su Sheng, announce that you are all free now. Hurry back to your families. From now on, you're no longer a member of the Flourishing Water Tribe." Sure enough, his words were more effective. These women did not believe him at first, but some of them tried to run into the forest slowly. Seeing that the Treant warriors had no intention of stopping them, they ran away. Seeing that someone had successfully escaped, the group of women ran away in an instant. At this moment, 3 wooden rafts floated over from the river. There were 20 to 30 warriors standing on them. Nicole's parents and the Bone Leaf Tribe's great elder had rushed over. "Little Na, are you all right?" Nicole's parents were really frightened. Ding Meng and Su Sheng had actually single-handedly killed their way into the enemy's nest. The Bone Leaf Tribe's great elder looked skinny, and the warriors he brought with him all looked malnourished. They probably had limited supplies, and even eating was a problem. Nicole's father explained in a low voice, "This is our tribe's great elder, Mr. Silverdale. The Great Elder is also worried about Little Na's safety. This time, he brought the most elite warriors. Ding Ming was speechless again. They all looked old and weak. How could they be called elites? However, when Silverdale saw the groaning Water Tribe warriors on the ground, he realized that something was wrong. He then saw that Su Sheng and the others were kneeling in the distance. He immediately walked over to Ding Ming. His attitude was not impolite at all, just because he was the elder. "This must be Mr. Ding Ming, right?" Ding Ming said, "Nice to meet you, Great Elder." Silverdale quickly replied, "You flatter me. Mr. Ting, may I ask what's going on here?" Ding Ming glanced at Su Sheng. "Get up." Only then did Su Sheng dare to get up. The first thing he did was to call his subordinates to save his wife. Ding Ming snorted. "You still know how to save your wife. You're still human." Ding Ming turned to Silverdale and said, "Great Elder, from the looks of it, you must have been beaten up a lot." Silverdale's expression was slightly awkward. "It's always been like this between tribes." Ding Ming said, "They're here drinking and eating meat, but you can't even afford to eat leaves. Take all of their tribe's things back." Silverdale's face immediately lit up. "I'll do as Mr. Ting says." What he meant was that once they stole Su Sheng's things, if Su Sheng wanted to take revenge in the future, they would have to rely on Ding Ming's protection. Ding Ming said, "How big of a deal is that? I told you to bring it back, so just do it." Without a doubt, he had agreed to Silver Valley's request with such a reply. As the group of warriors ran happily into the depths of the camp, Ding Ming beckoned to Su Sheng. "Come here, I have something to ask you." Su Sheng was both angry and helpless. Who in this area would dare to openly enter their camp and steal things? Normally, he would really fight to the death, but now that the Bone Leaf tribe had invited a god like Ding Ming, he was about to explode with annoyance. This son of his was really a piece of trash. All he knew was to drink and play with women, and he had no other skills. He was still not satisfied with having more than 10 women, and he just had to go after Nikona. Now, he had provoked a powerhouse, and a powerhouse from the human world at that. However, no matter how unhappy he was, he could only lower his head respectfully. "Mr. Ting, what orders do you have?" Ding Ming said, "Let me ask you, who is supplying the wood for the factory?" Su Sheng said, "The Thousand Leaves sect is supplying it." Ding Ming frowned. "What kind of sect is the Thousand Leaves sect?" Silverdale hurriedly explained, "Mr. Ting, the Thousand Leaves sect is in charge of this large area. Their main camp is near the Divine Forest, and they're also in charge of managing the entry and exit of the Divine Forest." Ding Ming asked, "Is this sect very big?" Silverdale hesitated. "Well, it's not considered small. After all, it's a sect." His answer undoubtedly revealed the answer. This was definitely not a large sect. How big could a sect that managed the poor tribes in this area be? Ding Ming continued, "Who's the sect master?" Su Sheng said, "It's Master Luo Bulyuo." Ding Ming asked, "How can I meet him?" Silverdale and Su Sheng both looked shocked. "I'm afraid you won't be able to meet him." Ding Ming frowned. "Why?" Silverdale explained, "No human has ever been able to get close to the Divine Forest." Ding Ming asked, "Is this a rule set by your king?" Silverdale smiled bitterly. "It's not really a rule. Our Green Tree tribe has never had much contact with humans, and it's only limited to the factory area. Mr. Ting, if you rashly enter, you might cause unnecessary trouble." At the end of the day, they were worried about Ding Ming's strength. After all, he was an outsider. If he suddenly entered the core area of an unfamiliar tribe, what would happen if someone had ill intentions towards him? Su Sheng's eyes turned. "Actually, there's another way." Junling asked, "What way?" Su Sheng said, "It's almost time for the tribes to pay their tributes. Moreover, this year is the day where we pay our respects to the tree god once every 10 years. We can use this opportunity to enter the Thousand Leaves sect. On Planet 36, every tribe had to pay their tributes to the sect they belonged to every year. The sect would then pay the tributes to the army, and in the end, the tributes would be sent to the royal family. There was no specific standard for this tribute. After all, Some tribes were poor and backward, while others were rich and prosperous. However, there was a general rule for all tributes, and that was that every tribe and sect had to be sincere. This so-called sincerity was whether or not you were willing to offer up your most precious resources. It determined whether or not you could pay your respects to the tree god. Ding Meng and Junling found the concept of the tree god to be very mysterious. There was no information about this in the Starships database, but according to Silverdale, the green spirit tree would appear once every 10 years. Its appearance would determine a major event for the Green Tree tribe, and the most typical example would be the appointment of a new king. The new king would change every 10 years, and the new king would have to be recognized by the tree god. Otherwise, no one in the Green Tree tribe would acknowledge him. Apart from that, the tree god would bless the entire Green Tree tribe when it appeared. Those who received its blessing were undoubtedly young talents. From then on, they would be able to display their talents and improve their strength by leaps and bounds, making the other Green Tree tribe members envious. At this point, the envy on Su Shang's face could not be hidden no matter how hard he tried. When I was young, I was fortunate enough to enter the Divine Forest and pay my respects to the tree god's true appearance. It's a pity that I didn't receive its blessing, or I wouldn't have become an elder of the flourishing water tribe. Ding Meng said, "It seems like the tree god they're talking about isn't fake." This question was directed at Xiao AI. Xiao AI clearly did not agree with the idea of the tree god. If there really is a tree god, then it would be an unknown higher civilization. But do you think the Green Tree tribe is a higher civilization? Ding Meng pondered for a moment before saying, "All right, then we'll go to the Thousand Leaves sect in the name of tributes." Silverdale hesitated. Then, "This tribute," Junling said to Su Sheng without holding back, "this tribute will definitely come from your tribe. What do you think? Is there a problem?" Su Sheng's expression could not be any more bitter. His tribe had suffered heavy casualties, and now they had been robbed clean by Silverdale's people. Now, they wanted him to pay tributes? Could they be any more reasonable? "You don't seem too willing." Junling stared at him coldly. No. Su Sheng was so scared that he quickly waved his hands. "I'm very willing, very willing. As long as Mr. Ting needs it, I'll arrange it immediately. I just don't know when Mr. Ting will be leaving." Ding Meng said in a low voice, "We'll leave now." Chapter 433. The offerings of the flourishing water tribe were quite simple. There were special dried aquatic plants and beast meat, colorful bone spirit leaves, fabrics made from high-quality spirit herbs, and steel pots and pans from the War of Gods Alliance. These were all filled to the brim with 5 large boxes, and then they were dragged along the road on the most primitive carts. Other than Ding Meng and Ding Meng, Silver Valley and Su Sheng both had to follow. Silver Valley naturally did not want to miss this ceremony, and Su Sheng had been requested by Ding Meng to follow, in case Ding Meng took revenge on the Bone Leaf tribe after he left. Nikona also followed Ding Meng. Although her parents were a little worried, they also hoped that Nikona would try her luck. Nikona was very talented in languages, and she was also very talented in music. According to her own words, she originally did not know what music was, but after working in the factory for a few years, she found that many human workers like to stay in the factory and play music using photon computers. After listening to a lot of music, she could also imitate it. When she saw that Ding Meng could make the green bone spirit leaves play music, she was really surprised and happy. Along the way, Ding Meng also gave her some tips on how to play the leaves. He did not expect that this little girl would be able to pick it up so quickly, and the music she played was even better than Ding Meng's. If this kind of talent was noticed by the royal family, and they also received the tree god's favor, then the Bone Leaf tribe would have a much better life in the future. Of course, she did not have much hope for the tree god's favor, but the royal family was indeed recruiting talents. What if she was lucky enough to enter the royal band? So along the way, Nikona humbly asked Ding Meng for advice. In fact, Ding Meng did not know much. Compared to the real masters of music, he was only a primary school student. He had only listened to the nomads at the border of the flourishing kingdom when he was young, so he naturally learned after listening to a lot. In terms of these areas, the light bird was more than a few hundred times better than Dingming. After the light bird evolved, it was like a completely different person. It also liked to be close to Nikona and flew around on the shoulders of Nikona and Dingming. After leaving the grassland, they soon entered the outskirts of the super forest. This place was just like Planet McGrady. Thick branches and huge shrubs connected together and then stretched straight up, completely blocking the sky, forming a huge natural protective barrier. However, the environment here was still much better than Madison. After all, the plants here were all alive, and signals could be transmitted out here. Dingming turned on the communication channel of his wristwatch and projected a screen. Kataga's face quickly appeared on the screen. After listening to Dingming's explanation, he expressed his approval for the actions of Dingming and the others. I know, it's been hard on you. Actually, their equivalent exchange is not fair. Dingming said, Oh, Kataka said, Our God's War Starfield is definitely more civilized than the Green Tree race. The materials we provide are better than their wood. We didn't provide them with any technology because the wood isn't their technology. Dingming pondered and said, You're saying that the Green Tree race also kept the things you wanted? Kataka also seemed to ponder. After a while, he said, I don't want to hide anything from you. The Green Tree race's secret to longevity is something that the upper echelons have always wanted to study. This reason is definitely not because of the soil. There must be a special reason. Secondly, the cultivation method of the Green Tree race is also something that we need to study. Dingming thought to himself that this was right. What kind of cooperation was this? It was definitely not as simple as studying the wood. There must be something else. Kataka continued. Since you can get close to the super forest, I still hope that you can continue your investigation. It's best if you can enter, but if you can't, then prepare to come back. Dingming nodded. Understood. A hint of hesitation flashed across Kataka's face. Dingming saw that his expression was not right and quickly asked, Sir, do you have anything else to say? Kataka nodded. I can only say that you must pay extra attention to your safety on Planet 36. The Alliance has just sent another fleet over. Do you understand what I mean? Dingming could obviously tell what was going on. Kataka had just arrived, and the Divine War Alliance had immediately sent another fleet over. The smell of gunpowder was getting thicker and thicker. As expected, Kataka explained, Personally, I'm very opposed to using force to solve problems, and what I'm most worried about is that force won't be able to solve the problem. The commander of this fleet is also Boding Sunkel. He's known for his toughness, and I have a feeling that he's not here with good intentions. I'll send a starship to land near the factory later. If the situation doesn't seem right, retreat immediately, and I'll meet up with you at the factory. After saying this, the signal was cut off. It gave off the feeling that Kataka had sent someone over, and it was not convenient for him to say anything more. Dingming remained silent. He had already sensed danger from Kataka's brief words, and this danger did not come from the Green Tree race, but from the space station. Xiao AI hesitated for a moment before asking, Did he find out something? It's not convenient for him to say. Dingming's expression was also somewhat serious. I think it's most likely so. At this time, the fleet had already entered the territory of the Thousand Leaves sect. There were purple-skinned treants everywhere on the road. They shuttled between the grass and trees, their movements more agile than apes. These treants cast curious gazes at Dingming and Junling. It was not that they had never seen humans before, but they were curious as to why these two humans would appear here. Xiao AI's detection vision quickly sent back information about the environment in front of them. This was a quiet mountain stream, and several streams of water formed dozens of clear pools. Following these pools was a spectacular waterfall. The beauty of this place was that the mouth of the waterfall was actually on top of a giant tree. This giant tree was at least 100 meters tall, and the inner caverns of the tree had been transformed into rooms. About a few thousand people lived in these rooms. At the top of the tree was an even flatter grassland, and a building finally appeared on this grassland. It was built in the style of a human church, but it was not made of alloy or crystal boards. Instead, it was made of various colorful wood, and it looked quite beautiful. Xiao AI said, "That place should be the Thousand Leaves sex camp." However, Ding Meng frowned at this time. Xiao AI was puzzled. "What's wrong?" Ding Meng said in a low voice. "That pair of eyes has appeared again." Xiao AI said in surprise. "Did you sense it again? Is it inside the camp?" "Definitely not." Ding Meng flatly denied. "It's still the same as when I first arrived. It's sometimes close, sometimes far, and sometimes it's erratic. However, I can be sure of one thing, and that is that I'm much closer to it. Previously, when I was near the factory, it seemed to be sleeping, but now that I'm close, it seems to have woken up. I'm sure it's carefully observing me." Xiao AI was also inexplicably shocked. At the very least, among the enemies that Ding Meng had encountered in the past, none of them had this kind of mysterious ability. This included the water droplet, the bird of light, and the singularity. Fortunately, the Thousand Leaves sect had already arrived at this time. There was a huge arched door formed by twisted branches on the main road, and there were blue-skinned soldiers guarding both sides of the door. There were also many treants hiding in the trees above the arched door. Looking at their expressions, they were probably the Thousand Leaves sect sentinels. There were also countless treant warriors moving about in the mountain stream behind them. The fighting strength of this place was clearly not something that the tribes could compare to. "Stop! Who are these people? What are they doing here?" In front of the arched door, a warrior wearing a hat asked loudly. His hat was very interesting. It was woven from all kinds of exquisite spirit leaves, and it completely lit up the dark forest. Ding Meng discovered that this hat also had a faint energy fluctuation. It probably had other uses. "This is a transmission hat," Nicole explained to Ding Meng in a low voice. Jun Ling asked curiously, "A transmission hat? How does it transmit?" Nicole said, "The spirit leaves themselves have a very unique sound effect. It can send out sound warnings, and it can also transmit the thoughts of this warrior to the sect master, so that the sect master will know what's going on outside. However, I don't know how it's woven and how it works." "That's amazing." Ding Meng and Jun Ling both felt that this was very novel. Could this be the Green Tree Tribe's unique telepathic telekinesis transmission equipment? In response to the leading warrior's question, Su Sheng and Ying respectfully walked forward. The Water Flourishing Tribe and the Bone Leaf Tribe are here to pay their annual tribute. Hearing the word tribute, the leading warrior's tone became much gentler. "Oh, so you're from the tribe?" However, his tone suddenly became cold. "What's up with the two humans behind us?" This question had been repeatedly discussed on the way here. Su Sheng braced himself and answered, "They're from the factory. We're short-handed, so they're helping us collect and escort along the way." "Oh." The leading warrior did not take it to heart. After glancing at Ding Meng, he waved his hand and ordered, "Men, open the boxes and check." The boxes were quickly moved to the ground and opened. The other soldiers also checked very carefully. Every item was repeatedly fiddled with, afraid that there was something hidden inside that should not be there. After a long time, the inspection was completed. The soldiers did not return the tribute and just left it on the ground. The leading warrior waved his hand. "All right, you can go back now." Su Sheng was stunned. "Go back. Go back where?" The leading warrior waved his hand impatiently. "Go back to your tribe, of course. Go back to where you came from." Su Sheng was anxious, "But we've already delivered the tribute. According to the rules, we can stay in the camp." The leading warrior knew what he meant. Since they had delivered the tribute, they could naturally stay in the camp and wait to be summoned by Master Roblo. This year was the tree god's year of worship, so they could enter the divine forest to pay their respects to the tree god. Look at what kind of trash your two tribes gave this year. Look for yourselves. The leading warrior picked up a bag of 5-colored bone spirit leaves and handed it to Su Sheng. "There's no problem with these things in the past, but you should know what kind of day it is this year. You want to pay your respects to the tree god with this trash? Go back and dream on." Su Sheng did not answer, but Silverdale was anxious. "Our Bone Leaf Tribe has always made a living by collecting spirit leaves at the border. These are the best quality spirit leaves our tribe has this year. Little brother, please be merciful." The leading warrior frowned. I'm not merciful. Just go back when I tell you to. Don't you understand human language? Silverdale was clearly anxious. These are really the best things our tribe has. Little brother, please let us in. Chapter 434. Silver Valley was telling the truth. Although Su Sheng was the one who provided these spirit leaves, they were all stolen from the Bone Leaf tribe by the Water Flourishing tribe. The treemen of the Bone Leaf tribe were the lowest class of people. Normally, they only ate low-quality spirit leaves and fruits. They worked hard for a year to collect these 5-colored spirit leaves, but they were actually considered trashier. Of course, the leader had his reasons, but to Silver Valley, this was unacceptable. These were the fruits of everyone's hard work for a year. No one could stand their hard work being treated like trash. Su Sheng also braced himself and said, "Yes, little brother, it's not easy for us to come here from a remote tribe. These are indeed our best things. After all, they are our offerings. Don't you think so?" It would have been better if he didn't speak, but once he did, the leader was completely annoyed. You don't have a right to decide whether they are offerings or not. I have the right to decide. If I say they are trash, then they are trash. If I tell you to go back, then go back. Are you going back? Are you going back? As he spoke, he picked up the javelin and hit Su Sheng with the handle. Su Sheng was definitely much stronger than these warriors. How could the handle of a javelin hurt him? Yo, you still want to shamelessly stay here? The leader was furious and slapped Su Sheng's face. Su Sheng clenched his fists, but he still didn't dare to fight back. This place was not a tribe. If he offended anyone, he would incur the wrath of Luo Buluo. That was something he couldn't bear. The leader gritted his teeth and said, "Since you don't want to leave, then don't blame me for being rude." After he finished speaking, he raised the javelin and stabbed it towards Nicole, who was behind the caravan. His idea was very insidious. Both of you are elders of the tribe, so I can't beat you. But if I kill this little girl with my javelin, I'll see if you still won't carry her body back for the funeral. This stab was really fast and trembling. Su Sheng and Luo Buluo didn't expect the other party to have the intention to kill. For a moment, they didn't even react. Ka! The tip of the javelin stopped half a meter away from Nicole's heart. Ding Meng's hand reached over and firmly clamped the tip of the javelin with 2 fingers. "Human, how dare you meddle in other people's business?" The leader of the warriors was also shocked. He pulled back the javelin with all his might, but the javelin did not move at all, proving that the opponent's strength was not weak at all. Ding Meng replied calmly, "Take me to your sect leader." The leader raised his head and laughed. "You little lunatic, you're seriously ill. Is Lord Loabulo someone you can meet whenever you want? Get lost." After that, he gathered all his strength and tried to pull the gun back. He was confident that he could pull it back, but the problem was that Ding Meng loosened his grip slightly. He used too much strength and immediately fell to the ground with the gun. "Bastard, someone come, capture this human for me." The leader of the warriors was frustrated in front of his subordinates, and he was immediately furious. Ding Meng slowly opened his palm and twisted his fingers into claws. He said expressionlessly, "I asked you to take me there, so you have to take me there." Just as he finished speaking, the leader of the warriors was instantly sucked over by telekinesis. Ding Meng's left hand suddenly grabbed his neck. The leader of the warriors was at least twice as tall as Ding Meng, but at this moment, he was like a shrimp in Ding Meng's hand, being squeezed half to death. His face turned red, and it was obvious that he was having difficulty breathing. Ping, ping, ping. The leader's voice transmission had immediately emitted a strange sound. Although the sound wave was low, it spread far and wide. It was obviously a warning to the entire camp. There were intruders at the gate. "Since you don't want to be polite, then I won't be polite either." Ding Meng tightened his grip on the leader's throat. His right hand formed a knife hand and casually cut the leader's shoulder. With a muffled crack, the leader's long left arm fell limply to the ground. Obviously, his shoulder bone had been broken. However, this guy was quite a tough guy. He actually endured the pain and didn't make sound. At this moment, the surrounding trance could no longer remain indifferent. They all raised their javelins and threw them at Ding Meng. Of course, these drizzles couldn't hit Ding Meng's group. They were all blocked by telekinesis. Just like the situation at the Water Flourishing Tribe, these javelins and arrows were all reflected back. The trance above and below the arched door fell to the ground. Of course, Ding Meng still held back. After all, he still needed to use the Thousand Leaves sect to enter the super forest, so he didn't want to make too much noise. However, the leader of the warriors was really unhappy. It's normal for you to think that these things are trash, but if you want to hurt Nicole, then I'm sorry. Ding Meng took off the leader's voice transmission hat. You think these spirit leaves are trash, and I think your hat is trash too. Eat it. After saying this, he didn't care how the leader struggled. He shoved the hat into the leader's mouth, causing the leader's mouth to deform. When had the leader ever been humiliated like this? He was tightly pressed down by Ding Meng and couldn't move at all. All he could do was whimper. Su Sheng, Ingu, you guys sure have guts. You actually dared to make a move at the entrance of the Thousand Leaves sect. A dignified voice suddenly rang out. It wasn't loud or soft, but it was just enough for Ding Meng's group to hear. In the mountain stream, a tall Trant in armor was walking towards the arched door, surrounded by a group of soldiers. Su Sheng's expression immediately became nervous. He explained in a low voice, "This is Lord Luo Buluo, the sect master of the Thousand Leaves sect." Ding Meng had already sensed that this Trent's aura was much stronger than the soldiers. Judging by the standards of origin ability users, this person was at least at the level of an advanced war elder. When Luo Buluo arrived at the arched door, Su Sheng and Ingu immediately bowed. When the leader saw that it was the sect master, his eyes immediately lit up. Unfortunately, he couldn't speak and could only struggle with all his might. "What's going on?" Luo Buluo asked in a low voice. "Why are there two humans here?" A sentry immediately stepped forward and explained to him. They came from the factory to help two elders escort a consecrator. We told them to go back, but they didn't want to. Instead, they attacked and injured people. This explanation wasn't too biased. Luo Buluo's expression immediately darkened. "Is that so?" Ding Meng was too lazy to argue. He simply answered generously, "That's right." Luo Buluo glared at him. "You sure have guts. Instead of staying in the factory, you dare to come here and cause trouble? Do you know where this is? Do you think you can act so wildly just because you have some ability?" Ding Meng didn't want to waste any more words with him. He put down the leader and slowly extended a finger. Luo Buluo was stunned. "What are you doing?" Ding Meng said indifferently, "One move." The group of people stared at each other. "What do you mean?" What answered them wasn't words, but Ding Meng's flying shadow. It really was a phantom that disappeared in the blink of an eye. It was like a person's visual and auditory hallucination. They felt as if something flew past them, but when they looked carefully, they realized that there was nothing. There was only a heart-wrenching pain. Luo Buluo fell to the ground, clutching his shoulder. His outcome was the same as the leader's. His shoulder bone was shattered, and his arm hung limply. Now, the only person who could clearly see Ding Meng's classic carp leaping over the dragon gate, backhand slash, was Jun Ling. In Jun Ling's field of vision, her eyes could barely keep up with Ding Meng's figure. As for the other Trant warriors, they didn't know what was going on. Their own boss had inexplicably fallen to the ground. "You." Luo Buluo was shocked. He now understood what the other party meant by saying that he could take you down in one move. He had never seen a human with such skills in the factory before. Ding Meng's strange attack immediately intimidated everyone present. All the Trants held their weapons as if they were facing a great enemy. However, no one dared to take the initiative to attack. "Let me ask you a few questions." Ding Meng squatted down in front of Luo Buluo. He didn't want to talk nonsense, but he also abided by the rules of the Green Tree tribe. In any case, they were all talking by force. He would first take you down before asking questions to avoid trouble. Luo Buluo gritted his teeth and glared. "What do you want to ask?" Ding Meng said, "The wood supply to the factory comes from here, doesn't it?" Luo Buluo said, What do you want? Ding Ming glared at him. Yes or no? Luo Buluo's hair stood on end from his glare. He mustered up his courage and answered, yes. Ding Ming said, these low-quality wood are supplied to the factory. Is this your idea, or is it someone else's idea? When he heard this question, Luo Buluo was slightly relieved. Is it the higher-up's idea? Ding Ming said, who's the higher-up's idea? Luo Buluo said, it's Master Spirit Sword's instruction. Ding Ming was a little helpless. Whose spirit sword? Su Sheng hurried over and explained, Mr. Ting, Master Spirit Sword, is the youngest son of the current king. He's also the prince of our Green Tree tribe. I heard that he's the most outstanding genius swordsman in our tribe. This background was a little big. However, Ding Ming was not swayed at all. How can I find him? I'm afraid that's very difficult. Su Sheng hesitated. The royal family and nobles are usually in the temple. The temple was located on the trunk of the sacred tree at the core of the super forest. With Ding Ming's identity, it was indeed very difficult to reach there. He couldn't possibly kill his way in, right? He was only at the periphery of the forest. The tribes and sects he encountered were not strong enough. However, who could guarantee that there were no experts in the sacred forest? Ding Ming was not arrogant enough to think that he could do whatever he wanted on Planet 36 with his current strength. You have a way to help me find him, right? Ding Ming once again looked at Luo Buluo. A strange smile appeared on Luo Buluo's face. You don't have to look for Master Spirit Sword. He's going to inspect our Thousand Leaves sect today. If you have the patience, you can wait for him here. Ding Ming no longer spoke. He slowly stood up with a complicated expression on his face. Ding Ming couldn't help but ask, what's the situation? Ding Ming turned around and looked into the depths of the forest. He said word by word, I don't have to wait for him because he's already here. Chapter 435. Ding Ming stared at the depths of the forest with a complicated look in her eyes. She seemed to be on guard and observing, but more importantly, she seemed to be thinking. Ever since she had known Ding Ming, she had never seen such a complicated expression on his face. She knew that there was a deeper meaning behind it. However, what she didn't know was that Ding Ming's heart was in turmoil. Once again, there was a problem with his telekinesis vision, and this time it was a new problem. Ding Ming's current observation range was 8,000 meters. Within this range, he could clearly see everything with his telekinesis vision. However, at a distance of 5,000 meters from him, a spherical blind spot with a diameter of about 800 meters appeared. If he could describe it, this blind spot was like a huge black hole. His telekinesis was completely ineffective in front of it. This abnormal situation was different from what he had encountered in the past. In the Noble Star Empire, Sister Zhong had used her origin energy to suppress his telekinesis. On Cypress Goo Planet, the inverse source crystal had absorbed his telekinesis. On the devouring realm of the immortal Weaver Star, the harsh environment had blocked his telekinesis vision. However, this time, his telekinesis vision was completely useless in front of this black hole. It didn't suppress or absorb his telekinesis. It was as if his eyes had been blinded. There was no problem with his eyes, but his vision had been completely blocked. Ding Ming had become blind. When he carefully observed the black hole again, there seemed to be a mysterious force on its surface that was repelling his telekinesis. After a moment, Ding Ming was overwhelmed with shock. It's actually the same kind of energy, Xiao AI decisively said. That's right, this energy is exactly the same as yours. It's also a universal telekinesis. If the person who came is that Prince Spirit Sword, then it proves that he also cultivates universal telekinesis. However, based on the range of his telekinesis attainments are far inferior to yours. Headmaster Zhu Bin had once mentioned in the memory that it was extremely difficult to obtain universal type of psychokinesis, and the number of people who possessed it was extremely few. However, when two fluxers with universal type of psychokinesis encountered each other, this kind of multidimensional vision would lose its effectiveness and a blind spot would appear between them, turning them into the so-called blind person. Ding Ming immediately switched to Xiao AI's detection mode. As expected, in the forest about 4,000 meters ahead of him, 3 members of the Green Tree clan were walking towards him unhurriedly. Walking at the front was an extremely short treant. How short was he? His height was about the same as Ding Ming's, and he did not exceed 7 meters. He was considered a cripple in the Green Tree tribe. However, he was wearing a set of silver armor that was actually made of alloy. It looked a bit like the armor of a human soldier. It covered his entire body tightly, only his arms were exposed. His skin was actually golden. This kind of skin color was the highest in the Green Tree race's royal family. Of course, this didn't mean anything. The most important thing was his temperament. He was obviously a young man. Not only was he young, but he was also handsome. His handsome face was mixed with a kind of youthful, tender, and firm and cold temperament, which didn't match his age at all. Based on his footsteps, this person's lower body was extremely stable. His fingers were slender and powerful, and the outline of his joints was clear. The web between his thumb and forefinger had a thick layer of calluses. He was certainly an expert in using cold weapons. The sword was hanging at his waist. Seeing this sword, Ding Ming's interest was piqued. It was a perfectly straight ancient sword, and its shape was very simple. The sword was hidden in a scabbard, and the scabbard was especially simple. This was the first time that Ding Ming had seen someone who could use this kind of ancient sword. Moreover, he didn't dare to underestimate the other party. This person's walking posture was rather peculiar. His steps were neither fast nor slow, and each step was just right. Every step he took gave people the impression that he was taking a leisurely stroll, but he also seemed to be walking as if he was flying, as if he was patrolling his territory. Behind him were 2 Green Tree clan's warriors, who were more than 3 meters tall, who seemed to be following behind him. If someone said that this person wasn't Prince Ling Jian of the Green Tree clan, then Ding Ming definitely wouldn't believe it. When he was about 800 meters away from Ding Ming, the black hole stopped. Ling Jian had clearly sensed the abnormality in his psychokinesis vision. In front of him, there was only darkness in front of Thousand Leaves Sex Gate, and there was a blind spot in his vision. He decisively waved his hand, and the 2 subordinates behind him immediately stopped. Ling Jian's eyes stared into the distance, as if he was secretly exerting his strength. The next second, Ling Jian's vigilant voice echoed in Ding Ming's mind. "Who are you?" This was the assimilating heart secrets cultivated by warlocks. It was an elementary spell, and although it was a low-level spell, it still couldn't be underestimated. This was because it was the foundation spell for psychokinesis, just like the Diamond Star secrets for origin energy. It had many special effects. The voice Ding Ming heard was a stream of information released by Ling Jian, which could only be received by fluxers of the same kind. Outsiders couldn't hear it, let alone hear it. They couldn't even sense it. Ding Ming also used the assimilating heart secrets and replied in the same way, "Hello." Ling Jian's voice was filled with astonishment. "So you have also cultivated the mind transmission technique?" Ding Ming asked with interest. "You call this the mind transmission technique?" Xiao AI immediately explained to Ding Ming. He definitely hasn't cultivated the complete assimilating heart secrets. The so-called mind transmission technique is only one of the effects of the assimilating heart secrets. It is far inferior to the assimilating heart secrets. Ding Ming could understand this reasoning. It was just like the difference between the Diamond Star secrets and the heat source method. One was something from the Mao Xing civilization, while the other was a version from a human world. There was no need to compare which was stronger. Ling Jian's voice suddenly became vigilant. "You are definitely not someone from my Green Tree clan. Who exactly are you?" Ding Ming explained. "I'm a human from the factory. I heard that during this discussion, a new batch of administrators and inspectors was sent to the space station. So it was you. As a member of the Green Tree clan's royal family, it was normal for him to know this information." Ding Ming didn't want to be long-winded, so he directly laid his cards on the table. "That's right, I am one of them. This time, I came down hoping to find your excellency and ask about the problem of what quality." Ling Jian suddenly stopped talking. It seemed like he was also quite vigilant toward humans. However, the black hole was slowly moving toward the arched door. 800 meters was not a long distance. Ling Jian's group of 3 soon appeared in everyone's field of vision. Now, their field of vision was really that of the naked eye. The magnifying effect of telekinesis vision was completely gone because Ding Meng and Ling Jian's telekinesis range had completely overlapped. Only after seeing the other party did Ding Meng realize that Su Sheng was not bragging when he said that he was a genius of the Green Tree clan. This Ling Jian obviously didn't really use his origin energy. The aura he gave off was that of a beginner warrior. However, if one could describe these traces of origin energy, it would be that this person's origin energy was extremely pure. The purity of Ling Jian's origin energy was different from Ding Meng's. Ding Meng's origin energy foundation relied on the repeated decomposition of the diamond star fusing art, tempering it time and time again, and finally transforming it into a qualitative change. However, Ding Meng was certain that Ling Jian's aura had not been tempered twice or thrice. It was completely the most natural origin energy, as clear as water and filled with boundless vitality. Not to mention Ling Jian's true strength. Just the fact that he could extend his telekinesis vision to 800 meters showed that Ling Jian was not an ordinary person. This person could not be lower than a combat master. Xiao AI said in a deep voice, "Ding Meng, this time, you've finally met an opponent of the same kind." Ding Meng nodded inwardly. He understood what Xiao AI meant. Although the enemies he had encountered before were powerful, he also had his own unique strengths. Thus, he was always able to turn danger into safety at the last moment. However, this person in front of him was likely to know what he knew, and even more so what he didn't know. If they really fought, the result would be hard to say. Seeing the wounded Trance and Luo Buyuo lying on the ground, Ling Jian's expression turned ugly. He said sternly, "Is this your so-called interrogation method?" Ding Meng spread out his hands and said, "I don't want to use force to solve problems, but it seems that your Green Tree clan likes to use force to solve problems." Ling Jian said in a deep voice, "Even if our clan likes to use force to solve problems, it's not up to you humans to point fingers at us. Since you dare to harm our people, you must pay the price." His aura instantly soared. Ding Meng hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Wait, let me explain." "Don't explain. Think about how you're going to beg for mercy later." As he said this, Ling Jian took a step forward and flew into the air like a bird in the forest. His speed couldn't be considered fast, but as he leapt up, the blazing heat on his body burst forth, and a gust of wind blew toward him. This gust of wind couldn't be considered fierce. It was like a warm breeze in spring, causing one's entire body to feel warm. However, just as one was feeling so warm that they felt as if they were floating in the air, one would suddenly feel that there were quite a few sharp points in this gust of wind. These were definitely hidden killing moves. Ding Meng didn't choose to face the gust of wind head-on this time. He somersaulted in the air and landed on the flat ground behind the door. The reason he did this was because he didn't want to affect Nicole and the others. As he retreated, Ling Jian, who was flying in the air, raised one of his hands. The gust of wind actually changed direction and suddenly turned into a tornado that swept toward Ding Meng. Xiao AI couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. His telekinesis is able to control origin energy so precisely. It's really not bad. Ding Meng landed on the ground, stood still, and looked straight ahead. When the tornadoes came crashing down on him like a tidal wave, he also released his telekinesis force field. Sha 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 sha. The astral wind was like a stream of water crashing against the materialized force field. However, as soon as it hit the force field, the stream of water would be torn apart and then disappear into nothingness. Ding Meng, who was behind a force field, was unharmed. Spiritual Sword did not attack again. He somersaulted in the air and landed firmly on a rock. Looking at Ding Meng, his eyes flickered. The shape of his pupils was also constantly changing. Various complex emotions such as surprise, envy, joy, suspicion, fear, and so on were intertwined in his eyes. After a long while, he stretched out his right palm and spread it out in front of Ding Ming. This was also a form of greeting from the Green Tree tribe. I didn't expect you to be not only a kindred spirit, but also a powerhouse from the human world. My apologies. Ding Ming nodded slightly and said in a low voice, I wouldn't dare. Chapter 436. As a general-purpose psychokinesis fluxer, Ling Jian naturally had good foresight. From the probing just now, he could see that Ding Ming's psychokinesis cultivation far surpassed his own. The Green Tree race had always respected two types of people. The first type was the strong. The strong had strength and could protect the peace of an area. The other type was the wise. The wise had foresight and could look far ahead and plan for the future. Ling Jian continued, but I have to say this first. You have harmed my people, so you must pay the price. Ding Ming also didn't explain anything. If you want to ask this guy, you have to first suppress him with force before you have the chance to ask. The air suddenly became even hotter, and this kind of heat wave caused white steam to rise from the nearby mountains and ponds. This Ling Jian's origin energy wasn't weak. Ling Jian's eyes were firmly fixed on Ding Ming, determined not to miss any expression on his face. Ling Jian's origin energy was still increasing. At this time, Su Sheng, Yinggu, and the others had already begun to retreat. The mountain stream's temperature was astonishing, and even the air had become hot. Only Junling was able to stand in place and watch. The air began to circulate, slowly raising waves of air. Although the waves of air weren't large, they stirred up the branches and grass on the ground and continuously blew in Ding Ming's direction. Ding Ming also seemed to be affected by this slight disturbance. The grass floated to the space between his eyebrows, and his eyes unnaturally blinked twice. Taking advantage of this gap, the long sword at Ling Jian's waist automatically shot out with a zhung sound. Halfway through, Ling Jian stretched out his hand to catch it, and with a flip of his hand, he furiously slashed through the air. Schwa! Rather than calling it a slash, it was better to call it a flick. The body of the sword seemed to have flung out a fiery red ball of light. This was a standard release of origin energy. The ball of light wasn't aimed at Ding Ming, but rather quickly sank into the ground. The ground also quickly turned red, and with a boom, boom, boom sound, the ground began to explode, raising flames more than 10 meters high. This situation was somewhat similar to a starship's particle laser cannons bombarding the ground. It was impossible to dodge. In any case, Ding Ming had never seen this kind of martial technique before. He wasn't sure how strong it was, so he didn't dare to recklessly dodge it. Thus, he secretly circulated his origin energy and fiercely slapped out with his palm in the face of the exploding flames. The Sacred Sun Tiger palm also pushed out a red torrent, but his torrent was much more powerful. In an instant, it drowned the flames that rushed up. However, the remaining force of his palm was stronger, and the torrent crashed into the trunk of a large tree. The tree was quite old, and even 3 ants might not be able to encircle it. When the torrent hit the trunk, it exploded and the tree broke into two on the spot. The huge trunk slowly collapsed to the ground, and the ants in the room screamed and crawled out to escape. The explosion of the torrent splashed out countless fiery red sparks. These sparks were all pure origin energy, comparable to the eruption of magma. The temperature was over 1,000 degrees, and the branches and leaves instantly turned into nothingness. Not even a trace of smoke came out. Fortunately, the Green Tree tribe was good at climbing. Otherwise, the ants would definitely be reduced to ashes if they fell. At this moment, Ding Ming suddenly felt a chill in his heart. This threat didn't come from spiritual sword, but from the pair of eyes that had suddenly opened. The eyes that were staring at him seemed to be filled with anger. Just this anger alone made Ding Ming's hair stand on end. He was stunned for a moment. A green light rose in front of his eyes, and the tip of spiritual sword's sword had already reached his eyebrows. The threatening sword aura almost pierced into Ding Meng's eyes. This sword fell vertically from the sky. Ding Meng quickly took a step back, and the sword almost pierced through the bridge of his nose. The sword sank into the ground. Spiritual Sword held the sword hilt with one hand, turned 180 degrees horizontally, and swept a foot toward Ding Meng. Pa! Ding Meng blocked his attack with his left wrist, but he was still retreating. This was because this guy's martial arts technique was similar to the 7-star ghost kick that Bamboo Pole had used in the Black Gold base. One kick after another, one move after another, and he didn't give Ding Meng any time to breathe. The most troublesome thing was that he didn't need to draw his sword. The continuous and shadowless kicks forced Ding Meng to retreat and parry. His hand gently waved, and he used his telekinesis to let the sword leave the ground and fly back to his hand. After forcing Ding Meng to the side of the mountain, he swung his sword diagonally. His swordsmanship had definitely been taught by a famous master. This move was very ordinary, but he had grasped the best timing for this move. Many masters would develop the ability to predict in advance when a battle reached its climax. He knew that Ding Meng would be exhausted and knew how to dodge. Therefore, when he swung his sword diagonally, he was sure that Ding Meng wouldn't be able to dodge it. Chi! A streak of blood spurted out from Ding Meng's shoulder. He seemed to be quite calm. His feet pushed against a mountain wall, and then he retreated along the mountain wall with a pung-pung-pung sound. His entire body rose more than 10 meters as he retreated. However, Xiao AI was shocked. She knew that Ding Meng's body had been strengthened by origin energy dozens of times. Even if he didn't equip the first prototype, ordinary weapons wouldn't be able to harm his body. However, Ling Jian was able to do so. From this, it could be seen that this green-edged sword was definitely a divine weapon. Ding Meng ascended along the mountain wall, but Ling Jian wasn't idle either. The climbing ability of the green tree race was far superior to that of humans. Ling Jian's toes lightly tapped against the mountain wall, and he rose 5 or 6 meters. Then, he tapped again and continued to ascend, accompanied by a sharp gust of sword wind. The gust of sword wind couldn't be seen with the naked eye, but one could sense it with their perception. In Ding Meng's perception, his opponent's sword energy was no longer a sword itself. Instead, it had completely transformed into a large tree with luxuriant branches and leaves. The tree trunk, branches, and leaves were all sharp blades, and a single touch would cause blood to flow. Fighting barehanded with this guy was truly disadvantageous. Ding Meng decisively waved his hand as he retreated. His belt left his body and transformed into a cross-shaped blade in midair. Catoptric deflection rapidly rotated to form a disc shape, directly suppressing Ling Jian's attack. Ding, 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 ding. A series of rapid sounds rang out in the air, and the situation suddenly reversed. Now, it was Ding Meng's turn to suppress Ling Jian. Ling Jian, on the other hand, was falling. The origin energy and sword wind from both of them were extremely powerful, causing the broken branches and debris on the ground to fly everywhere. It was as if a storm was blowing in all directions. The surrounding trance all hid far away, staring at the empty space by the mountain stream in horror. This was their Green Tree tribe's most respected prince, one of their most outstanding geniuses. Yet, he was actually being suppressed to the point of suffocation by a mere human. Ling Jian indeed had a feeling of suffocation. As soon as Ding Meng's sword appeared, he immediately felt an unprecedented pressure. Ding Meng's style was the complete opposite of his. Ling Jian focused on sword techniques, moves, coherence, close-quarters combat, and other such techniques. However, Ding Meng's sword energy didn't follow the usual routine at all. Ding Meng only had one move, and that was to stab. If one stab didn't hit, then he would stab again. Each stab was faster than the last, and the strength behind each stab was also greater than the last. After the two of them landed on the ground, Ling Jian clearly knew that Ding Meng was going to stab him again, but he couldn't think of any good way to block it. He could only block it in a flurry. It was obvious that his attack had been disrupted by Ding Meng's counterattack, and he was retreating toward the arched door. Ding Meng didn't want to waste time with him. After another stab, he took advantage of Ling Jian's unsteady footing and decisively lowered his head to dash forward. Then, he fiercely pushed his shoulder upward. Bang! A gust of air exploded, and the air was torn apart. The Overlord's mountain-crushing power directly sent Ling Jian flying. Ling Jian was indeed skilled. He twisted in the air and made a few strange postures. Then he fell. His long sword stabbed into the ground first, supporting his body so that he didn't fall. This movement was a bit like the looking back at the moon sword technique. Even when he slowly straightened his body, he still didn't pull out his sword. With the sword as the center, the ground exploded with a boom. The location of the explosion was 10 meters behind him, and a huge crater appeared. Xiao AI said in surprise, "This guy can actually use his sword to divert your strength into the ground and transfer it to another place. What kind of martial skill is this?" Strangely, Ding Meng didn't follow up with another attack, even though he had such a great advantage. Instead, he quietly stood there with the Catoptра deflection still spinning in his palm. After Ling Jian stood there for a moment, his body swayed. He opened his mouth and spat out a large amount of blood mist. Just now, he hadn't completely diverted the force. There was still a small part of it inside his body, which directly caused him to be seriously injured. Only now did he realize the huge gap between himself and Ding Meng. Just as he was about to open his mouth to speak, his stomach suddenly churned again, and he once again spat out a large amount of blood mist. Sir Ling Jian, Sir Ling Jian. Luo Bulyuo and his two subordinates ran over in alarm. Ling Jian slightly waved his hand, indicating the three of them to retreat. Luo Bulyuo and the others didn't dare to retreat. If Prince Ling Jian was injured in the Thousand Leaves sect, it was hard to say whether Ding Meng would be fine or not. However, Luo Bulyuo was definitely finished. It would be strange if the royal family didn't deal with him. Your Excellency's strength is superb. Ling Jian admires you. Ling Jian was, after all, a prince, so his eyesight was much sharper than the average person's. He knew that he had run into an expert sent by the God War Alliance. It would be very difficult for him to get through this hurdle. Ding Meng didn't answer, but his expression became even more dignified and complicated. Ling Jian took a deep breath, barely suppressing the discomfort in his internal organs, and then continued, "Your Excellency, please let go of the people of my Thousand Leaves sect. They have no grievances with you. I've always been responsible for the matter of the wood. If you have any problems, just come at me." Ding Meng still didn't answer. He looked as if he had become stupid. Ling Jian suddenly felt strange. He probed, "You won't kill me?" It would be difficult for Ding Meng to kill him now. Just a moment ago, when he sent Ling Jian flying, he once again felt the existence of the eyes. That kind of peeping was close at hand. He had a feeling of extreme danger. As long as he dared to move, even a little bit, the eyes would probably make their move. This kind of frightening premonition was unimaginable to others. You clearly knew that there was a potential powerful opponent nearby, but you couldn't find its trace. You didn't even know whether it was a human or a ghost. Therefore, it was best to stay put and not move. Ding Meng suddenly thought of something and immediately said, "Your god is protecting you. Is it the tree god?" Ling Jian was suddenly stunned. Then he revealed a pious expression and loudly shouted, "The tree god is supreme! The tree god is supreme!" He exclaimed, but Luo Bulyuo, Su Sheng, Yinggu, and the surrounding ents all knelt down and cowed out. At this time, Ding Meng suddenly walked over. "Stop fighting, Ding Meng!" Chapter 437. Jun Ling didn't walk towards Ding Meng, but came to Spiritual Sword's side. "Prince Spiritual Sword, may I ask if you can let me take a look at your sword?" Spiritual Sword found that Jun Ling's waist also had an ancient sword that was almost exactly the same. They both had perfectly straight sword bodies and jet black scabbards, looking very similar. After the long sword was pulled out from the ground, Ding Meng noticed the true body of this sword. This sword reminded him of the sword that Chu Shaoqin gave him. In fact, the two swords were very similar. The scabbards were pitch black, the mouths were square, the hilts were short and sharp, and the whole body was slender and straight. It was the most standard ancient sword. However, this sword was different. It was surrounded by a layer of faint cyan light, as if a halo surrounded the sword body, causing the hilt to not have the cold sharpness of the Krypton gold ancient sword. On the contrary, its brilliance was filled with a kind of gentle, tranquil, and sacred temperament. At a glance, one could tell that it was a famous weapon. Junling also slowly pulled out his long sword. Then, Spiritual Sword was shocked because Junling's sword was the same. The sword body was covered with a layer of cyan flame. The aura of this layer of cyan flame seemed to be manic and restless, giving the sword a kind of murderous, violent, and crazy temperament. However, when the cyan flame sword was unsheathed this time, the sword body hummed and trembled spontaneously, echoing with Spiritual Sword's sword. Even a person who didn't know the value of the sword should be able to see that the two swords must have a mysterious connection. Perhaps they came from the same origin. You, Spiritual Sword, raised his head in horror. Where did you get this sword from? Junling was very calm. This sword was passed down from generation to generation by my ancestors. Its name is Red Lily. Where did your sword come from? Spiritual Sword was completely stunned. My sword is the sacred sword of my Azure Tree Divine clan's royal family. It was also passed down from generation to generation. Its name is Red Lily. The red spider lily was the red spider lily. It had two meanings. One of them was endless love, the omen of death, and the summons of hell. The other was endless yearning, desperate love, and a letter from heaven. The two meanings foretold two different results. These two swords were indeed related. Even the temperaments of the swords were completely different. Spirit Sword indeed had the elegance and bearing of a royal family, so it wielded the gentle as water red pearl sword. Junling was also a forest woman who killed decisively, so she wielded the violent and bloodthirsty sandflower sword. Dingming thought to himself, no wonder even the catopter deflection could not cut it. It turns out that this sword has a great background. At this time, Dingming found that the extremely dangerous threat nearby had suddenly disappeared. The eye had mysteriously disappeared again. He took a deep breath and said, Prince of Spirit Sword, I have no malice toward you. I just want to ask you some questions. Spirit Sword looked at Dingming and then looked at Junling. Then he stretched out his hand and said, Please come to the Thousand Leaves sex camp for a detailed discussion. His action had already shown that the one he trusted was not Dingming, but Junling. Because Junling held the Sandflower Sword, even if they were not of the same kind, she was definitely not his enemy. The one who taught him the sword technique was a highly respected sword saint grandmaster of the Azure Tree clan. The grandmaster had also mentioned to him that there was more than one sacred sword. Anyone who held a sacred sword had close contact with the Azure Tree clan. As for more information about the sacred sword, even the grandmaster did not know. There was a large green grassland outside the church building above the waterfall. Since Spirit Sword was the prince of the Azure Tree clan, Luo Bulio naturally had to arrange something for him. However, this arrangement was somewhat shabby. It was nothing more than a few simple tables and chairs. Because Spirit Sword had always disliked being surrounded by attendants and was extravagant, his material requirements were not high. Although he was an aristocrat of the royal family, his interest was in cultivation and swordsmanship. After sitting down, Spirit Sword was not in a hurry. He very gracefully invited Junling to taste the green spirit of the Azure Tree clan. This green spirit was a fine wine unique to the Azure Tree clan. It was brewed with a variety of spirit leaves and herbs and had a very good refreshing effect. It was similar to the calming tea Dingming had obtained in the Meteor City. Junling was also extremely fond of wine. Madison Planet was poor in resources, and fine wine was a rare luxury. As long as there was wine to drink, Junling and the other five would often have to compare notes with each other to determine who was better and who was better. The green spirit was filled with 2 wide spirit leaves. It felt like dewdrops on a lotus leaf, very tempting. Only after the fine wine entered their stomachs did Junling open his mouth and say, "Prince Spirit Sword, we don't have any other intentions. As the inspectors of the factory, we found that the quality of the wood you provide has been declining year by year. Your representative has been unwilling to give us an explanation, so we came." Spirit Sword sighed and said, "Although I am responsible for providing the wood outside the divine forest, this is actually not my intention. I'm also acting under orders." Oh, Junling was somewhat surprised. If you can provide the wood within the divine forest, who should we talk to? Spirit Sword smiled bitterly and said, "It's useless to talk to anyone." Junling was immediately stunned. "Why?" Spirit Sword sighed and said, "This is a long story. In fact, your God War Starfield and our Azure Tree clan originally had no intersection, and everyone was at peace. However, 7 years ago, the God War Alliance came here and proposed the wood trade condition. My father thought about it again and finally agreed." Junling and Junling listened quietly. There must be a reason behind this. Spirit Sword continued, "Your human world is very different from ours. At least, the level of technology that you have is something that we can't reach." My father also agreed because of this point. His purpose is also to change the situation of our Azure Tree clan, which has been farming and hunting for generations. Ding Ming and the others had also thought about this point. Interstellar travel and slash and burn farming were really one in the sky and one the ground. At least the Azure Tree clan's king's starting point was good. It's just that my father's idea has always been opposed by my sister. Spirit Sword's tone changed. Moreover, she is not the only one who opposes. Many priests have also expressed their disapproval. Junling said, "Why? Could it be that they reject human technology?" Spirit Sword shook his head and said, "The reason for their opposition is not this. My sister's view is that our Azure Tree clan has always been blessed by the tree god. The tree god himself worships nature, and our planet is originally a natural civilization. Once we accept human technology, the two may not be compatible. Even if they are compatible, no one can predict whether the consequences of development will be good or bad." Junling nodded. She obviously agreed with this statement. The God War Alliance is so powerful, but they don't even have their own planet. What they build is a space fortress. Powerful technology may not be beneficial to you, and it is very likely to destroy the ecological balance. Spirit Sword said, "There's another reason that I believe you should also understand. The Alliance provides us with all the daily necessities. The daily necessities are indeed very complete. The armor on my body is custom-made by the Alliance. However, the starships, ships, weapons, 3 cabins, energy storage, and other technologies that my father is looking forward to are never provided by the Alliance. Every negotiation between our priests and your commanders has been very unpleasant." Ding Ming and the others had also thought of the following situation. That was, the Azure Tree clan would also reduce the quality of wood year by year to deal with the Alliance's approach. Spirit Sword explained, "My father was also forced to issue such an order under the pressure of the opposition. Therefore, it's useless for you to discuss it with anyone." Ding Ming and Junling suddenly fell into silence. This matter was no longer something that people at their level could solve. Spirit Sword said, "Actually, the opposition's suspicion is also reasonable." Ding Ming finally spoke. "What are they suspecting?" Seeing that it was him who asked the question, Spirit Sword immediately shut up. Junling couldn't help but smile and said, "Prince of Spirit Sword, this is my companion, Ding Ming. Although he's also a factory inspector, the two of us have no malice toward your family. Nicole was rescued by him, so I absolutely trust him." In the distance, Nikona immediately put her hand on her forehead and gently reached out to Ding Ming, who was sitting on the straw stool. Ding Ming slightly nodded. Spirit Sword nodded. "Miss Nikona's breath is a rare pure person in our Azure Tree clan. I have reason to believe that the royal band will accept her." Nikona immediately bowed to Spirit Sword to express her deep gratitude. Spirit Sword then sighed. According to our information, the 6 major sects of the God War Alliance are actually very warlike. They constantly expand the star ring in space and compete for resources everywhere. This is not a peace-loving sect. The opposition suspects that their motives are impure. Dingming nodded. Actually, I think so too. Spirit Sword said, our Azure Tree clan, from people to things, including rivers, mountains, and birds, all rely on the protection and grace of the tree god. On the surface, they're trading our wood, but in fact, I'm afraid that they want to spy on our great god through the study of the Azure Spirit Divine Wood. The god is supreme and will never allow outsiders to touch it. Dingming pondered and said, Prince Spirit Sword, I have a hypothesis that I hope you don't mind. You should know that the fleet on the space station is so huge and powerful. Why don't they directly descend on your divine forest? Spirit Sword snorted disdainfully. How can the power of God be imagined by ordinary people? No matter how powerful the Alliance is, they still have scruples about God. How can they easily invade? That's why they used this indirect method. But unfortunately, my sister is a wise person. She saw through the Alliance's intentions. Dingming hesitated. Is your tree god really so powerful? Spirit Sword also seemed to hesitate. You obviously had the chance to kill me before, but you didn't do it. Did you feel that the tree god was nearby? You're also a warlock, so you should be able to feel it. Dingming felt a little uncomfortable at the mention of the mysterious eyes, but he also felt that there was no need to lie. Yes, it should be nearby at that time. I couldn't see it, but I'm sure it definitely exists. I have this feeling. Spirit Sword hurriedly asked, is it this feeling? It is silently watching you, as if it is far away from you, but also as if it is beside you. Dingming nodded. Yes, it is this feeling. From a space station to the ground, it was almost always there. It is very magical. Spirit Sword suddenly showed an envious expression. He sighed deeply. Human, you are actually the lucky one of our Azure Tree clan. Dingming was stunned. Why you say so? Chapter 438. Spirit Sword sighed. Ever since I was a child, I've only sensed the tree god 4 times in total, except for the grand worship ceremony once every 10 years. These 4 times were when I went out to hunt or when I encountered extreme danger. If it weren't for the tree god's existence scaring away the monsters, I would have long become their food. Dingming pondered and said, is there anyone else who can sense it besides you? Spirit Sword shook his head and said, most people can't sense it. Only a very few people can sense it. Once they sense that the tree god is nearby, this person will usually receive the favor of the god. You said that the tree god has been observing you. Perhaps he has an important mission for you. Dingming was stunned. You know, I'm a normal human being. Spirit Sword shook his head. No, if you were on the space station, the tree god wouldn't pay attention to you. But as long as you come to our Azurewood star, the tree god treats all the creatures on the planet equally. Dingming pondered and said, can I understand it this way? Let's borrow your point of view. Any creature on the ground of Azure with star 3-6 can be regarded as the tree god's people? Spirit Sword said, yes, that's right. Dingming was somewhat expectant. I also want to see this legendary god. Spirit Sword said, you will see him. I originally wanted to invite Miss June to the tree god. I'm looking forward to finding out the origin of these 2 holy swords. The Thousand Leaves sect was very close to the Divine Forest. Dingming decided to contact Kataga again before setting off. He had a faint feeling that things were more complicated than what Kataga and Spirit Sword had said. The God War Alliance had spent so much effort, and it was estimated that it was not just to see the tree god. While Dingming and Spirit Sword were discussing, Dingming strolled to the waterfall. Seeing that there was no one around, he turned on the wrist device. However, this time, the virtual screen did not appear. The wrist device indicated that it could not contact Kataga. In this case, it was usually because the wrist device had been completely turned off and could not be accurately located. Ding Ming immediately felt a shadow in his heart. Could something have happened to Commander Kataga? Ding Ming sent out another command, but the wristband still showed that it could not reach Kataga. His face sank. There must be some new changes in the space station. Xiao AI analyzed. That's very likely. Kartika said that the Alliance has sent a new fleet over, so I'm afraid they're about to start a war. However, these Green Tree clansmen still don't seem to know anything. Ding Ming said, "Let's reach the Tree of God first." The two of them had guessed correctly. At the same time, on the space station, Kataga was slowly walking through the tunnel with his 4 subordinates. The other fleet had already entered the port. 10 minutes ago, Commander Jian had sent a notice that a confidential meeting would be held in the space station's conference room, and Kataga was invited to attend. Upon receiving this notification, Kataga knew that something was amiss. Instead of discussing via video conference, Captain Ji Yin wanted to have a meeting in the conference hall. Whatever Captain Ji Yin was about to announce was probably something big. As expected, after the doors to the conference hall opened, all the hundreds of seats were filled. All the captains and first officers had been invited. This kind of meeting was usually a pre-war military mobilization meeting. Ji Yin was sitting at the center of the long table. Currently, Ji Yin had been sent by the upper echelons of the God War Alliance, and his command authority was 1 level higher than Kataga's. Thus, Kataga could only sit opposite him. However, there was something that made Kataga very angry. He scanned the hall and realized that Boding was actually sitting in the back row, looking like he had no respect for the world. Without his permission, Boding had been released for military law. There was no doubt that this was Ji Yan's order. However, it was easy to understand. Ji Yin was Boding's uncle, and among the 6 major factions, he and Ji Yin belonged to different factions. They had always been at odds with each other, so today's meeting would not be as easy as it seemed. As expected, a galactic map had been generated on the conference table. The green tree of Planet 36 was zoomed in, and all kinds of data were constantly being updated. Ji Yin was still very polite to Kataga. He took the initiative to shake his hand before sitting down. "Captain Kataga, I have been sent by the upper echelons to reinforce Green Tree Space Station. It is an honor to work with you." Kataga frowned. "There is still a need for reinforcements here." "Yes," Ji Yin replied without batting an eyelid. "The Alliance is worried that we do not have enough military power, so they have sent my fleet as reinforcements." Kataga asked, "Green Tree Planet 36? Ji Yin's voice grew louder. "Yes, the Alliance has already held an official meeting and decided to launch a military operation. They have also authorized me to be the military commander." Kataga did not doubt him. Ji Yin would not lie about something like this. He also asked without batting an eyelid, "What does Captain Ji Yin plan to do?" Ji Yin pointed at the 3D map on the table and said, "My plan is to split our forces into 2 groups. The first group, Captain Kataga, will lead your first fleet to launch a frontal attack from the sky. The second group, my second fleet, will cooperate with you to land on the surface of the sea. We will then form an encirclement and clear out the things inside the superforest. I will send a specific battle plan and route to your command center." Kartika had long been mentally prepared for this news, but he was truly shocked by Ji Yan's plan of action. There were 70 million Green Tree clansmen below, but in Ji Yan's eyes, they were nothing more than things that could be exterminated at any time. Although he did not have a good impression of the Green Tree tribe, he respected life. As long as it was life, it should not be trampled on, not to mention that these were all innocent lives. If they really did that, then their God War Alliance would be no different from the invaders. No matter how correct the dark forest laws of the universe were, he only knew one thing: invaders would not have a good ending. Ji Yin said, "Captain Kataga, if you have any suggestions, feel free to raise them." Kataga said expressionlessly, "I have no objections. I just want to ask a few questions." Ji Yin said, "Please ask." Kataga said, "Captain Ji Yin, if my fleet launches an attack, it will unavoidably hurt the Green Spirit Divine Tree in the center. Is there a better way to avoid that?" This was a very important question. The Alliance had always hoped to make a fuss about the central Divine Tree, but now they had decided to attack directly. Wasn't this a little contradictory? Ji Yin also understood that this question could not be avoided. He muttered, "Captain Kataga, I'll be frank with you. Our first target is not the green spirit divine tree, but the rich superconductor crystal mine beneath the tree." Kataga was shocked when he heard this. There was no record of this in the various reconnaissance records in the database. How did this guy know? Could it be that this guy had a spy on Planet 36? Understood. Kataga nodded. The second question is that the Alliance has always wanted to research the secret of the Green Tree tribe's longevity. Our large-scale attack will only cause casualties, so how can we research it? Ji Yin said, "Don't worry about this. We can't completely wipe out the Green Tree tribe. When the time comes, we will build a research facility on the surface and conduct experiments directly." Kataga was stunned. The Alliance forbids any form of live experiments. Ji Yin replied, "That only applies to the humans of our God War Star field. The Green Tree tribe is not included." This was a classic example of being unreasonable. It was not directed at Kataga, but at the Green Tree tribe. If the two fleets were to act together, it would be an unprecedented disaster for the Green Tree tribe. This was not an outcome that Kataga wanted to see. Kataga's expression did not look good. "Captain Ji Yin, I'm afraid this is not the unanimous opinion of the Alliance's upper echelons, is it?" Ji Yin did not directly answer his question. Instead, he said earnestly, "Everyone here should be aware of the Alliance's situation. Starlink has been expanding year after year, and the population has increased time and time again, but the resources needed to maintain the planet are being depleted bit by bit. If we don't think of a solution soon, Starlink will no longer be everyone's home. This is a very good opportunity. Planet 36 has a beautiful ecological environment, rich in mineral resources and suitable for living. We can build a colony for the remaining Green Tree tribe members to live in, and some of the people on Starlink can migrate here to relieve the pressure on Starlink. If possible, we can even make Planet 36 the native planet to strengthen the Alliance. If we win this battle, everyone here will be the first batch of contributors to the expansion of our God War Star field." Whispers and discussions immediately broke out in the hall. It was obvious that most people were moved by his words. Kataga, on the other hand, was deeply shocked. This plan sounded very grand, but there was a problem with it. This was definitely not a plan formulated by the 6 major factions. It was definitely Ji Yan's personal plan, or rather, it was the ambition of the Blue Light group that Ji Yan belonged to. Kataga was not the kind of person who was overflowing with love, but this crazy plan was no different from a crime against humanity in his eyes. Most importantly, the Green Tree tribe's Planet 36 was very strange. The upper echelons of the Long Voyage Alliance that he belonged to were the anti-war faction. This was because their faction placed more emphasis on research in technology, energy, biology, medicine, exotic species, and other fields. They had given a clear opinion on the Green Tree tribe's research over the years. There were too many unknowns on Planet 36. If they could avoid using force, they should try their best not to use force. They were not as weak as they seemed. Kataga asked, "When will the operation begin?" Ji Yin answered, "In 48 hours. Kataga fell silent. Ji Yin asked, "Captain Kataga, do you have any other questions?" Kataga turned around and walked towards the door. "I've been feeling a little unwell recently." Ji Yin's expression did not change. He said calmly, "Captain Kataga, please rest well during this period. The First Fleet will be temporarily commanded by Vice Captain Jibo. What do you think?" Kataga did not answer. He just paused for a moment, then quickly walked out of the hall. Chapter 439. On Planet 36, Ding Meng and the rest followed Spiritual Sword into the jungle. He was not used to traveling with Spiritual Sword. Because of the overlapping range of telekinesis, both his and Spiritual Sword's vision was almost black and could only see with their naked eyes. However, he did not know what was wrong with Spiritual Sword. It was probably because he had been defeated by Ding Meng and was unhappy about it, so he kept his telekinesis vision open. Now, both of them had become blind. However, Ding Ming was not completely blind. His telekinesis vision was much wider than spiritual swords. Although he could not see within 800 meters, the area between 800 meters and 7,000 meters was quite clear. As for spiritual swords' telekinesis vision, it was completely black. After walking for a long time, Spiritual Sword suddenly turned back and said, "We are about to enter the divine forest." Jun Ling said, "Is there anything we need to pay attention to?" Spiritual Sword smiled. "There's nothing special to pay attention to. Just follow my route. It's easy to get lost if you walk randomly." Jun Ling nodded his head and followed closely behind him. However, at this moment, Ding Ming, who was at the back of the team, secretly stopped in her tracks. She had discovered a new situation with her telekinesis vision. 7,000 meters ahead of her, a similar scene appeared before her eyes. At the edge of the super forest, an invisible flow of energy rose from the ground and went straight to the sky. From afar, it looked like a layer of membrane. Ding Ming had seen this kind of membrane in the black gold base before. It was a man-made metal dome. Its purpose was to create an illusion of the alternation of the 4 seasons and to confuse the laborers. This membrane also rose straight up. It was thousands of meters long and completely enveloped the super forest. However, there was no surge of heat in the membrane. It was really like a layer of invisible gauze. Others might not be able to feel the existence of the membrane, but Ding Ming did not believe that Spiritual Sword could not feel it. So he asked, "What is that?" Spiritual Sword turned back strangely. "What is that?" Ding Ming frowned. "It's the thing that's enveloping the divine forest." Spirit Sword suddenly said, "I forgot that you're also a warlock. You can also see it. This is the holy blessing, which is used by the tree god to protect the forest. It already existed when our green tree race was born." Ding Ming asked, "People who are not warlocks can't see it?" Ling Jian shook his head and said, "It's strange. Our Green Tree clan has many warlocks, but I'm the only one who can see it." Ding Ming was surprised to hear this. "You have a lot of warlocks? How many are there?" Spirit Sword frowned and said, "There should be 3,000 to 4,000 people." "What?" Ding Ming's eyes widened. What kind of terrifying concept was this? Take the Holy Grail Federation's Blue Moon planet as an example. Blue Moon planet's population exceeded 20 billion, but at most 10 Fluxers had appeared. Green Tree Clan's population was 70 million, but surprisingly, they had 3,000 to 4,000 Fluxers. This probability could be said to be a miracle. Ding Ming could not help but ask, "Are you sorcerers? Or were you born warlocks?" Spirit Sword said, "I'm not clear about this. In any case, I only learned this ability after receiving the favor of the god." Ding Ming asked, "How long did you learn it?" Spirit Sword said, "It's not that long. It should be 3 years. This." Ding Ming was flabbergasted. If his psychokinesis was converted to real time, he had cultivated for about 13 years to reach his current level. This guy had reached such a level in just 2 years. What exactly was going on? How did you cultivate? Ding Ming could not help but ask. Spirit Sword did not say anything and continued on his way. Ding Ming turned his head and looked at Ding Ming with a somewhat helpless expression. "Sorry, I didn't mean it. I was just a little surprised." Ding Ming also knew that his question was somewhat abrupt. Regardless of which race it was, cultivation was the same. Who would be so bored as to tell you about their cultivation? Xiao AI suddenly opened her mouth and said in a grave tone, "Ding Ming, that thing called divine protection is neither a barrier nor a membrane." Ding Ming was curious. "Then what exactly is it?" Xiao AI said, "According to my analysis and calculations, the result is that it is a high-level force field created by a general-purpose psychokinesis." Ding Ming was completely dumbfounded. "Are you sure your calculations are correct?" Xiao AI's voice was unusually serious. "It's normal for you to have such doubts, because I also doubt the results of my calculations, but that's the truth. It is a psychokinesis force field that completely envelopes the super forest. In fact, using force field to describe it is an understatement. Starting from the form of psychokinesis, It has already gone through the steps of waveform, microdot, line, plane, three-dimensional, and materialization. It can even change between these forms at will. If this was created by a person, then I dare say that this person has already surpassed the ranks of junior warlock, intermediate warlock, senior warlock, super warlock, and warlock master. His psychokinesis has been cultivated to the point of perfection, returning to its original state. Perhaps this person did not want to disturb the Green Tree tribe, so he controlled this force field into the form of a membrane. Ordinary people can't detect it, not even the starship's radar. Ding Meng was really stunned. Is there really such a person? Xiao AI said. With the level of civilization of the Green Tree tribe, it's impossible for such a person to exist. The trans can't possibly have such a long cultivation time. Ding Meng understood what she meant and asked tentatively, if it were me, how long would it take for me to reach this level? Xiao AI pondered and said, if you cultivate according to the method of combining the anti-gravity force field and source energy on the S expedition, the theoretical time you need is 13,122 years. In the real world, it would be 4,374 years. If you use the Divine Light Warehouse on Planet Madison, this time can be shortened to about 150 years. Ding Meng was numb from hearing this. It would take 150 years to use the divine light energy. Could someone who could cultivate to this level not be called a human? Was this person a god? He suddenly thought of something and hurriedly said, could this be released by their so-called tree god? It could be said to be omnipotent. Even the powerful Shunguang technology may not be able to withstand it. Think about it. Logically speaking, there are blind spots between all types of telekinesis, but you can see it. It is so powerful that it can ignore this law. If the Green Tree clan does not allow humans to enter the superforest, then there is no way we can pass through this barrier. If you don't believe me, you can try. Even if Ding Meng was given 100,000 guts, he wouldn't dare to try because he had already tried it once in his perception. When his telekinesis touched the edge of the force field, it didn't even touch the outer layer of the force field. It felt like a light cotton ball touching a solid copper wall, and it bounced off with a light touch. Soon, the group arrived at the outer layer of the invisible force field. Under Ding Meng's suggestion, Spiritual Sword shut off his telekinesis vision and took the lead to walk in. In Ding Meng's vision, the thickness of the barrier was estimated to be less than a centimeter. When Spiritual Sword passed through, his entire body turned dark green. But after passing through, his body immediately returned to normal. He looked as if nothing had happened to him, and so did the two soldiers who followed him. After the three of them passed through, Nicole also passed through with light steps. Different from Spiritual Sword, Nicole's body completely turned into a pure white, shining pupil the moment she passed through. The light bird was squatting on Nicona's shoulder. It did not seem to have changed, but it still passed through very easily. Junling was completely unaware of all this. He also walked in without hesitation. The moment he passed through, Junling's body turned red, but the green flame sword in his hand turned dark green, and the divine light weapon on his wrist turned multicolored. Xiao AI said, I can see that this is some kind of test to determine who can pass through and who can't. It's like the various scans on a starship to determine one's identity. Ding Meng also seemed to understand. Spiritual Sword was the most orthodox member of the Green Tree clan, so he was green. Chapter 441. The tree god's face was vivid and lifelike, especially its facial lines. It was completely similar to the face of the Green Tree tribesman. This face felt like it had come out from the broken void. It looked down on all living beings from above, as if its gaze could see through everything, including the human soul. All the Green Tree tribesmen in Myrtea's city knelt down, chanting praises. Their attitudes were all sincere and solemn. Even Ling Bai and the others knelt down. Ding Meng and Ding Meng did not kneel. The two of them did not have the habit of kneeling. Furthermore, Ding Meng was now certain of one thing. The pair of eyes that had been peeping at him along the way was the gaze from this face. This gaze was so substantial that no one dared to look at it directly. Xiao AI finally said something shocking. "It's not a god." Ding Meng was stunned. "Then what is it?" Xiao AI said, "The green tree god in the middle of the forest. It should be a super life form." A super life form. This was a life form that was above the strange body. It did not have an origin race and any kind of creature in the universe, as long as it existed in a single and unreplicable environment, coupled with all sorts of coincidences. After tens of millions of years of nurturing, it would gradually develop self-awareness and become a rather unique life form. Simply put, even if it was a flower or a blade of grass, as long as the corresponding conditions were met, it could grow into a super life form. Of course, the probability of this happening in the universe was extremely low, so super life forms were very rare. Even in the technologically advanced Holy Grail Federation, the interstellar fleet had not discovered the existence of a super life form during long voyages. Every super life form was different. Not only was it different in terms of form, but it also included their abilities, strength, species, and even their personality, style, thinking, biological evolution process, and so on. They were all unique existences and could not be viewed with common sense. Therefore, it was very difficult to communicate with them. This was one of the wonders of the universe. However, no one had expected a super life form to appear on such a primitive and backward planet. According to Ling Jian, the tree god would appear once every 10 years to bless the green tree tribesmen. This meant that this green tree god should not have any ill intentions towards the green tree tribesmen. This might be a life form filled with kindness. As expected, the tree god's gaze covered the land. Ding Meng felt a familiar feeling again. It was the feeling of the starship's detection beam scanning his body. It was like ripples on his skin. This feeling was very uncomfortable. Not long after, the various spirit leaves on his face fell to the ground and scattered in all directions at an extremely fast speed. This scene was like a celestial rain of stars falling from the sky, scattering into every forest, every street, and every corner. Ding Meng could not see anywhere else, but he could clearly see the situation of many young men and women in the square. When these spirit leaves landed on a person's body, they immediately turned into a round green fruit. This might be the legendary fruit that could awaken psychokinesis. Many people were so excited that they did not even take a bite and directly swallowed it. There were also some spirit leaves that turned into shiny javelins or strange weapons, but most of the spirit leaves turned into tools for daily use. The colorful and splendid spirit rain lasted for 10 minutes before it stopped. Strangely, none of the royal family members on the stairs received any spirit leaves. Instead, it was the people from all over the forest who received the spirit leaves as a gift. At the same time, on the main control console of the First Fleet's mothership, all the staff were also shocked. The light screen clearly showed that the colorful face below was also looking at them indifferently. The gaze seemed to have materialized. No one on the scene could explain this strange phenomenon. Suddenly, a staff member exclaimed, "This ghost face is transmitting information to us. It's in the language of the green tree tribesmen." Jibo quickly asked, "What is it saying?" The staff member did not answer. Instead, he converted the information into human language and displayed it on the central screen. There were only 6 words in total. "Invaders, go to hell." Suddenly, the command room was dead silent. Everyone felt a chill down their spines. This was no doubt a warning. There was not a single word of nonsense. The shorter the sentence, the more intimidating it was. Jibo calmed himself down and asked in a low voice, "Can you detect what that thing is?" The staff member immediately answered, "We can't detect it. From the radar, there is no energy fluctuation in that area, but it's there." At this time, the remote real-time projection was connected. Jian's image quickly combined. He had obviously seen this strange and scary ghost phase through the radar, but he was still quite calm. These are all tricks of the barbarians. It's just a bluff. Everything is going according to plan. We're about to land. In the square of the palace, the blessing ceremony had ended. All the ants stood up, still looking up at their great tree god. Ding Meng was surprised to see words appear on his retina. You are the chosen one. The chosen one was the person chosen by the Shang civilization's holy tree and shouldered a special mission. Could these words be the tree god's telepathic information transmission? Just as he thought this, the words on his retina changed again. Yes, this. Ding Meng and Xiao AI were shocked. What kind of powerful transmission method was this? How to do it? The tree god said, "You have the chosen singularity, the Mao Xing mark, the divine light weapon, and the Xueqing Shan phase modified body. They are perfectly combined. You're not a pure human." The tree god's words were concise and clear. It was clearly in the form of words, but one could feel its emotions. Ding Meng hurriedly asked, "What is the chosen singularity?" The tree god did not answer at all. Its emotions did not seem to be affected at all. It only said coldly, "The invaders have arrived." Ding Meng's vision immediately changed. What appeared in front of him was tens of thousands of meters in the sky. The God War Alliance's interstellar fleet had already spread out. Countless flying units were descending like a great wall of steel. On the other side of the land, on the beach by the sea, another fleet had already landed. Countless robots, battle armor, vehicles, and large mechanical units had already landed. They were also advancing toward the forest in a densely packed manner. The formation was terrifying. The tree god said, "The prophecy has appeared. The end is near. You are the new chosen one here." Ding Meng did not ask any questions this time. He decisively said, "What do you need me to do?" An inexplicable emotion appeared in the tree god's words. "This race has existed for 20,000 years. We can't go extinct just like that. I can protect them for a while, but I can't protect them forever. I'll leave this place to you." The words were slowly fading away. It seemed that the tree god was unwilling to say more. Ding Meng looked at Junling beside her. Junling was also standing in the same place. His pupils had been shrinking, and his gaze was very surprised. The same thing was probably happening in his field of vision. Sure enough, after a moment, Junling woke up. She could not help but say excitedly, "I just talked to this god." Ding Meng said, "It seems that this god can communicate with many people at the same time. Did it tell you anything?" Junling nodded and said, "It said a lot, but it's too late to tell you now. It wants me to help you and protect this place together." Ding Meng could not help but smile bitterly. There were starships all over the sky. He could not protect them even if he risked his life. At this moment, a dull whistling sound came from the horizon. The first fleet had finally arrived. The first to descend were tens of thousands of unmanned attack drones. They were as dark as a dark cloud, one after another, like the waves in the sky. The square of the palace was suddenly filled with exclamations. All the ants showed a look of fear. The people of Myrtage's city were in an uproar. Many people went back into the trees and forests. It seemed that they were running for their lives. Any ants with a little brain could see that this had already shown that the War of God's Alliance had torn up the agreement without permission. They had removed the veil of gentleness and revealed their original ferocious nature. Their great god was indeed omnipotent. Even the powerful interstellar fleet was forced to retreat. Xiao AI said coldly, "It's too early to celebrate." Ding Meng nodded as well. How could a special class fleet be defeated so easily? On the mothership's control panel, Jibo was fiddling with the screen. Authorized hybrid missiles, ready to fire. Hearing this order, the staff member was a little hesitant. "Sir, the scope of this ghost face protective shield is limited. Once the missile is launched, even if it can't be destroyed, the harmful materials formed by the explosion will seriously damage the ecology of Planet 36 and hinder our follow-up operations. Jiyan's image appeared again. We have to get rid of this protective shield. Otherwise, the ground forces won't be able to enter the central forest. Jibo said coldly, "Fire!" At this time, the steel plates on the wings of all the starships opened, revealing the dark silos. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Countless missiles with crystal flames spouted from the bottom of the silos and crashed into the protective shield from all directions. In fact, Jibo's thinking was correct. The tree god's face could block the particle laser and the cluster beam, but it was not really able to block them. He guessed that they were probably absorbed by the protective shield. Although the missiles were more primitive, these hybrid missiles not only exploded with crystal energy, but also released a large amount of chemical materials to cause polymerization, instantly causing a large area of pollution. The protective shield could not absorb the air, right? Sure enough, countless missiles whizzed over, and the face changed. All the spirit leaves glowed brighter, and on the basis of the force field, a layer of soft, invisible waves bounced out. Boom, 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 boom. Fireballs exploded everywhere in the sky, covering the sun. Looking from the ground, the sky had completely turned into a chaotic mixture of dark clouds and flames. Of course, these missiles didn't explode on his face. Instead, they exploded about 300 meters away from the protective shield. This was clearly the blocking effect of the shockwave. However, even so, the dust and poisonous gas produced by the explosion connected together and spread toward the periphery of the superforest. Rattage's city was safe, but this attack still made people tremble. On the screen of all the main control consoles of the First Fleet, the ghost face was still unharmed in the smoke. This time, Jibo was a little dumbfounded. He turned to look at Ji Yan's image. "Captain, do we activate the main cannon of the battleship?" The main cannon of the God War Alliance's battleship was also the ion railgun. Once this weapon was used, even if it could penetrate the ghost face, the 36 stars would be gone. Ji Yan pondered and said, "I think it has a lot of energy. Activate the secondary cannon of the battleship."